Hi, chat. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Hope you guys are doing well. It is Wednesday. Wait, hold on. Is it Wednesday? Yes, it's Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday. I was like, is it? I kind of forgot. It is Wednesday, guys. It's Wednesday. And all this stuff came out on Friday. We didn't get a chance to get to it. Big Second Amendment news. That's right, chat. Big Second Amendment news. If you're big news, yes, if you live in the state of Illinois, the news is not so good. But if you live in the state of New Jersey, party fucking time! That's right, chat. It's party time in New Jersey. Hopefully that was enough. YouTube's not going to freak out. But, yeah, some good times coming, chat. Good times are coming. And, Eric says I'm on CP time since I moved. I mean, we have family over and we are entertaining them, okay? Family first, chat. That's right. Family. To quote the ICP. But also, like Vincent Trell says, we're family. That's right. It all comes first. Isn't Halloween yet? No need to wear your stop sign costume yet. Thanks, EDW. Cheers for Jesus. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Well, yes, in the state of New Jersey, it's Whip 'em Out Wednesday. Whip out your standard capacity magazines and belt feds. Oh, yeah. What should be my first banned item? I don't know. I don't know yet, but you can do, there's all kinds of stuff. We're going to get to that because even then there are some issues. There are some issues about what you actually can do in New Jersey and how this actually is going to work. So we're going to get to all of that. We're going to get to all of that. It's very, 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 is very interesting. It's very interesting to say the least, you guys. Where is once again, like I said, if you're in New Jersey, happy days are coming. If you're in Illinois, you're gonna have to wait a little while longer, it seems like. Holy crap, rip headphone users on non-compressed mic. The mic's the same as it's always been. I haven't changed it. I haven't changed anything. I feel like strong mad. This is my inside voice. So, I'm more excited about the magazine limit, though. We should be excited about everything. I got a bunch of things. What does it mean for Cali's Second Amendment issues? Well, it means nothing right now. It means nothing right now. So, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that, chat, because it doesn't change a whole lot here, but as of right now, the case out in California, it's all being held. It's all being kind of held up. And basically they're going to let these cases sort out, because remember, there are two cases going to the Supreme Court coming up. There's Vir Montes out of Illinois, and there's Grant out of Connecticut that are going up. They're going all the way, chat. They're going all the way to the top. And speak louder. We can't hear you. I will. They're going all the way, chat. Those cases are going to determine it. Sadly, remember, Snope v. Brown did not get it. That was the Maryland case. Then there was Ocean State Tactical out of Rhode Island, which I think that was kind of, that's a pretty cool name for a gun store, Ocean State Tactical. And actually, hold on, I kind of want to check the Ocean State. Is that Rhode Island? I always wanted to check, but I never did. OCEAN, the Ocean State. Oh, it is Rhode Island. It's since 1972. Oh, wow. Okay. It's got over 400 miles of coastline, yet it's only 37 by 48 miles. That's actually a lot of fucking coastline. And there's no point within it more than a 30-minute drive from the ocean. Oh, kind of interesting. Interesting. James says, Sean is Ohio defense attorney that relocated to Florida. Yes, I am. I got a little too far into that chat. But yes, I am an attorney who recently relocated to Florida. I'm licensed in Ohio. If you guys are new, welcome. Yes, Grant. Woohoo. Yes. And remember, guys, those Grant and Viramontes, when they get decided, will kill assault weapons bans and they will kill magazine bans. Those are going to be critical because some states have assault weapons bans. Some states just have magazine bans. You know, there's some issues there in between them on what can be done, what can't be done, what are arms, what are not arms. But I think tonight we're going to start with what happened in Illinois because it's a bit more of like, we've already talked about this, the constant disappointment out of the Seventh Circuit. Remember, chat, the Seventh Circuit, it's the only state with any bans are Illinois, the great state of Illinois, the land of Lincoln. You might know it as Illinois. And there's multiple cases we've seen so far where these judges in the Seventh Circuit go, well, actually, I don't know what arms means. And you're like, this is shit. But they get away with it. And this court kind of rehashes everything very quickly. And you know where they're going right away. The Seventh Circuit has heard a bunch of these cases. And we're gonna go over some names you guys have seen before. Anyways, this is on the Seventh Circuit. So Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. You have Caleb Barnett versus Kwame Raoul, the Attorney General of the state of Illinois. And so what happened was argued September 22nd of 2025, decided July 9th. That's a long time to wait. And so what do you see here? Well, this is before a couple of judges. It's before the Chief Judge of the Seventh Circuit and also Judge Easterbrook. Judge Easterbrook is is up there. He's not as big as like Judge Posner out of the Seventh Circuit, or I think even Judge Scalia, the Scalia the younger, the lesser Scalia is in the Seventh Circuit. But Judge Easterbrook is also a very prominent judge on the Seventh Circuit. Does a lot of their writing. You'll see him in a lot of books. You'll see him. He authors a lot of opinions. So they talk about, and they start out with, in 2023, when the guy shot up the 4th of July parade, and he ended up pleading out, Illinois enacted the Protect Illinois Communities Act, PICA. This is a PICA we don't like. So it criminalized the manufacture, sale, delivery, purchase, and possession of assault weapons and large capacity magazines. And there's nothing large about this one. I mean, it's not large at all. It's pretty standard to me, if you ask me. A grandfather clause permits pre-existing lawful owners of regulated items to continue possessing them, yes. Even then, Illinois still had some restrictions. It was still really tough, dealing with things. So what happened? Well, across the state, people challenged it, seeking declaratory and injunctive relief. One federal court granted an injunction, 2 did not, and all 3 losing parties appealed. They consolidated their appeals. We covered this case, guys, Bevis versus City of Naperville. Damn it, Bevis. There was a couple other cases. One of the cases in Bevis was Barnett v. Raoul, the one itself. But it was also the case itself set for similar 4 challenges pending in the Southern District of Illinois. So, guys, just like how the Supreme Court, like the trans cases, they consolidated them. Viramontes and Grant are being consolidated. The Supreme Court will consolidate cases at times. Well, lower courts will consolidate them too. So the Seventh Circuit had groups of assault weapons ban cases being filed all over Illinois, and it was grouping them together because they were all challenging different things, so they started consolidating things. And they say after building out the record following Beavis, and remember, chat, there are times where the courts want the record to be built out. They want motions to be pled. They want depositions and evidence to be taken and not just make snap judgments. The Barnett parties proceeded to a bench trial. In the end, the district court held much of the act violated the Second Amendment and the offending provisions were not severable. Now, you might say, how did that happen in Illinois? This was in the Southern District of Illinois. You guys remember, except for Chicago, Illinois would be a red state. If it wasn't for Chicago, Illinois would be a red state. I mean, guys, remember, Illinois is dominated by Chicago. The thing people used to ask all the time is they referred, you live north of I-80 or south of I-80 to denote if you were generally were in Chicago or the Chicago areas. But remember, this is how garbage Illinois is. Like, Chicago controls the state, you guys. I mean, look at all these little districts snaking their way out from Chicago. Look at all these little districts snaking their way out. And then you get these districts here where they're just snaking along, trying to make as many blue districts as they can. You know, this is, you know, without this nonsense here, Chicago would be a red state. Chicago or Illinois would be a red state. And as we get to this, though, they keep going. And they say, for the reasons that follow, we focus on the Act's application to AR-15s and 30-round magazines. And they say, we hold these are consistent with the principles that underpin our nation's tradition of firearm regulations. Whether to adopt them is thus a decision reposed on our elected representatives and reverse. So the trial court said this is bullshit, but the Seventh Circuit is saying, no, they're allowed to do this. Yes, up until this year, before California, before Florida, and before Virginia, and before Texas, Illinois had one of the most gerrymandered maps in America for decades, really. A lot. Yes, and that little squiggly one that cuts across the state, that is another blue district because they group together Champaign and East St. Louis. Or as Nelly likes to call it, the Lou. You know, coming from the Lou and he's proud. Now, this is from here. This then they talk about why they're going to do this. And they talk about the Protect Illinois Communities Act. We're not really worried about that, but what is a ban? Well, there's 4 types of weapons or assault rifles. First, anything semi-automatic that can accept a detachable magazine. And that's how you start off with an assault weapons ban. It has to accept a detachable magazine. So AR-15s, AK-47, you know, an AR-15 M16 pattern, an AK pattern rifle, an FN-FAL pattern rifle, a G3. But there's other guns that accept them. Technically, if you own a semi-auto BAR, Browning automatic rifle, that's a detachable magazine. A Remington Model 8, a Winchester Model, what would that be? A Winchester Model, A Winchester Model 1907 technically accepts a detachable box magazine. A lot of guns do. A lot of guns accept them. And even then, pistols can become assault weapons, depending on the situation, because they have over 10-round magazines. You know, they have at least one of the following features: a pistol grip or a thumb hole stock, a protruding grip that can be held by the non-trigger hand. Well, does that mean a pistol grip out in front, like if you have a rail? Yeah, but it also just means a stock I can hold. A folding, telescoping, and telescoping just means it can extend like an AR-15. Thumb hole or a detachable stock, but you already said a thumb hole up here, so they're already listing it twice. A flash suppressor, and then a grenade launcher, which is not uncommon, guys. If you see like SKS rifles, you can get the Yugoslavian ones with the rifle grenade launcher on it. There's actually quite a few guns that do have that fitting attached to it. But how many people are launching rifle grenades? Nobody. or a barrel shroud. Barrel shroud is something that covers the barrel so you don't burn your hand on the barrel and you don't touch the barrel to affect, accuracy. Or as Tucker Carlson got the late Carolyn McCarthy famously to go, it's the shoulder thing that goes up, but it doesn't. So the second and third, it bans semi-automatic pistols and shotguns that can accept detachable magazines and have at least one feature from a list of features, the details of which are not relevant. And that's true. It doesn't matter. Then finally, it bans certain firearms based on the type of ammunition feeding they utilize. For example, if you have a belt ammunition device. So, for example, if you own a semi-automatic machine gun, and you might say, why would somebody own a semi-automatic Maxim gun? Because it's still cool to go king, 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 bang, 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 bang. It's still fun to do. It's more fun than not. They also make little crank triggers where you can crank it and it's going brrr. But if you have ammunition that's on a cloth belt or disintegrating links, anything like that would be banned. They point out as the expired federal assault weapons ban from which Illinois borrowed. The act defines assault weapons not only by reference to features, but through a list of prohibited models. And guys, we've talked about this before. If you go to California, they list out a bunch of guns by name to make sure that they are not allowed in the state, including the AR-15 pattern. So they also ban assault weapon attachments. That is any device capable of being attached to a firearm that is designed for converting a firearm into an assault weapon. So basically bump stocks and also forced reset triggers and binary triggers. It also criminalizes the purchase, sale, or possession of large capacity ammunition feeding devices. Anything more than 10 rounds for rifles and shotguns and more than 15 rounds for handguns. So if you have like a regular Beretta 92s magazine is okay. But if I have a Glock 17, that's not okay. It technically holds 17 rounds. Also, if you happen to have a Stendo, if you got one of them, you got one of them 30-round sticks for your Glock, for your Switchy. You want to let that blicky just go brrr. You want the blicky to go brrr. You can't. So, and they're referring to them as large capacity magazines. And finally, certain 50 cal rifles and their cartridges, as well as any device like a bump stock. That also includes Barrett's and any 50 cal rifles they don't like. So they talk about, there are a lot of grandfather, clauses for exceptions. And they had to show you basically you own the weapon at the time. And there's a bunch of cases here we're not going to get into, but we need to get into where they actually talk about what they want to assess and how they address it. So they get the standard review. So they're reviewing this district court's decision to grant the injunction for abuse of discretion. Because that's all they're doing. This was a permanent injunction. The court granted it. I'm enforcing the injunction permanently. So they say on the merits, however, our standard review is somewhat murkier. And they say that they also have to address the merits. It's clear that we review underlying questions of constitutional law de novo, meaning, the right to bear arms. Well, that's going to be a de novo review looking for clear error. It's less clear if we owe any of the district court's findings of fact. Notice they're already like, oh, well, we don't know what to do. We're just going to make this up and say, well, I guess we're just going to have to figure this one out, guys. Uh-oh, what do we do? Oh, yeah. This is just absolutely horseshit what they're doing here. And you can tell they're getting ready to rug pull. And from here, you can see they're telling you under Federal Rule 52, findings during an appellate review of a bench trial mean there was no jury. Findings of fact must not be set aside unless clearly erroneous. And what does that mean? You have to be left with the definite firm conviction that a mistake has been committed. Now, they try to argue, though, the Supreme Court has said, well, we may be more searching as a legislative facts than adjudicative facts. And the Supreme Court saying, well, we don't believe it's clearly erroneous applies to legislative facts at the issue here. And they say the line can be blurry. And notice this is what they're doing. They're hiding between things. Oh, it's blurry. We're going to hide in this blurry area of the law, and we're going to make a distinction on things. And they're already giving themselves permission to do what they want. And they ultimately say, we don't need to wade into murky waters. And they say, instead, because we do not ultimately base our decision today on the invalidity of the factual findings, we don't need to stand to standard review. And what are they going to do? They're going to say, no, it's constitutional. We therefore assume the district court's factual findings are shielded by clear error review, which is what they're going to argue here. You know what? Okay, fine. They're protected. But we're going to still determine he abuses discretion. Because remember, they don't want this. So what's going on? Well, they're facial challenges. And a facial challenge is this is unconstitutional on its face. Not just that the laws applied to me is unconstitutional, but the law is unconstitutional for every single person. The fact that it exists alone is unconstitutional and it needs to be struck down. Now, what are they going here? Well, these facial claims are hard to win, and that's true. Facial challenges are hard to win, but when you win, you fucking win all the way. To prevail on a claim of facial invalidity, you must establish that no set of circumstances exist under which the challenge provisions would be valid. And under, notice what they're already getting into, Rahimi. And they're citing Second Amendment cases already. They're using Rahimi already. And they say, and they're pointing out in the appeals, what does this mean? If any, they have to side with the defendants if the act's restrictions of any assault weapon is constitutional, if any part of it is. So they're very limited here to what they're going to do. But they're going to do it. And they're telling you how they're going to do it right now. They're going to, what you're doing right now. Please don't send me Baldos. Don't send me Baldos, please. So they say the plaintiffs cannot satisfy this demanding standard. Indeed, they don't even advance arguments as some of the items that are regulate. They're all arms. For example, the act restricts semi-automatic rifles that have grenade launchers attached. Yet the district court unsurprisingly held that the act may ban these weapons because they are not in common use for lawful purposes. And this is horseshit. It's all common use. But they point out that no plaintiff argues otherwise on appeal. And this is where, once again, guys, I've told you this, you have to be careful at what you argue, because if you want to go in there and say, oh, I want an AR-15, you might get that from a judge. Judge, I want a fucking grenade launcher. And you know what a judge is going to go? Oh, I don't know about that. Amy Coney Barrett's not going to let you have a grenade launcher. Brett Kavanaugh ain't going to let you have a grenade launcher. Neil Gorsuch, I will say after the citizenship case, he'll probably let you have a grenade launcher. Clarence Thomas will. Samuel Alito will. But, you have to be careful about what you ask for. And here they ask for things that are problems. And they said, likewise, the focus is on up to 30-round magazines. But the restriction of large capacity devices includes belts and ammunition devices holding more than 30 rounds. Now, I think they're being a little disingenuous because that also includes drum magazines or like 40-round PMags. Or, for example, you have like a Steyr AUG, and those are like the 40-round magazines for those. Or the Schmeiser-style coffin magazines. Just anything. PPSH drums. All kinds of drums wouldn't qualify. And they say because the plaintiffs have not made showing that Supreme Court precedent requires the broad relief their challenge seeks, it's not ours to grant. Now, what is this case here? Well, they also say United States versus Charles, which is an 8th Circuit case from 2025. And it rejected the facial challenge to the federal machine gun ban because some machine guns, such as the M230, mounted on military helicopters, are not bearable and thus lie beyond the Second Amendment. See, and that's how melanated the judges in the courts are getting. Think about that. Think about that, chat. Think about that. Well, actually, you can't carry it. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. That is how the court did that. That is how the court did that. And Chad, if you're not aware, the M230 is the cannon, although technically it's a chain gun. That's on the Apache helicopter, the 30 millimeter autocannon. But notice that's what they said there. I mean, technically, a 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon. You can't carry that. You can't carry a GAU 8 off an A10 Warthog. I guess you can ban machine guns. That's what they're doing right now. That's literally what they're doing right now in this case. So that's what they're doing here. That's what they're doing here. Just such horseshit. Such horseshit, guys. And they say, following the Fourth Circuit's model under similar circumstances, and notice, guys, the Fourth Circuit is Maryland. That's where Snope versus Brown came from, or Brown versus Snope. And the Fourth Circuit also upheld assault weapons bans. We proceed to evaluate the Act's restrictions on assault weapons and large capacity magazines, based on the circumstances which the parties have principally focused in the AR-15 and 30-round rifle magazines. And they talk about, whether a citizen's ability to purchase and possess the items is protected. And moreover, they developed record primarily focused on them. And sometimes you got to focus on a thing here. They also point out if we don't address this, the other cases that were consolidated with Bevis would remain pending in limbo. We can't send them to purgatory, chat. Somebody might say, what's limbo? Limbo is where unbaptized babies went when they died in Catholic lore. Very long time ago. It's what they used to think when a baby died. It went to limbo. Kevin says, they really mean an M230? Surely they mean an M240, right? Because 30 millimeter is above the NFA, right? No. Anything that's automatic is a machine gun. So like a Mark 19 is not a destructive device. It's a machine gun. So if you got the M230 autocannon chain gun off of an Apache helicopter, that's a machine gun. Even though it's even though it's a destructive device and every round in it's a destructive device, the M230 itself is a machine gun. So they didn't mean the M240 because you can take the M240 off of a helicopter, slap a stock on it, put a grip on it, take off the spade grips, and shoot it from the man-portable position. They're talking about specifically an aircraft-mounted autocannon. So that's what they're getting after. But hi, Kevin, how you doing? But no, 30 millimeters covered by the NFA. You can buy those. I mean, heck, I was working on, before we left, I was working on trying to 3D print a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. And I think I finally found on Alibaba, I can get seamless drawn over mandrel tubing with a 40 millimeter internal diameter mailed to me. So I still might be able to do that, which will be fun. Because if I can do that, Baldos are 40 millimeter. They're like 39 millimeter. But that'll be fun. We can make a Baldo cannon. So yes, they are. And like we'll make a whole thing for it. It'll be funny. I mean, just think about that as like a rubber baton slug that the police use in riot control. Instead, you get hit with some nasty scroty Baldo. Yeah. Now let's keep moving. So they say the Second Amendment. How does it provide, chat? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's fucking poetry. It's poetry. Just mwah. What is there not? What's not to love, chat? What's not to love? I don't know about you, but it makes sense to me. And they talk about Supreme Court recognizing Heller. These words secure the right to an individual right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. A right justice story. Just a story called The Palladium of the Liberties of a Republic. Yes. Because not only self-defense against yourself, but self-defense from the government. And remember, as I learned as a young lad, you know, when my dad explained to me the Second Amendment's not about hunting. It's about taking an Uzi and using it on the cops if they make a move on you illegally. Papa Criminal is based. 2 years later after Heller, the court confirmed states must respect that right by virtue of the 14th Amendment in McDonald versus City of Chicago. Once again, history lesson. And they say all Americans therefore may enjoy the means of self-defense the right secures. Yep. But they say there are limits. And, you know, they talk about the free speech clause is not enshrined an absolute right to express oneself however one sees fit. And they're also claiming here the Second Amendment does not give you an unlimited right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever for any manner and whatever purpose. Notice they're citing Wolford versus Lopez, the Hawaii case, chat. They're citing that. It's like, When they point out while the founding generation cherished the Second Amendment, they did not think it was absolute. So what does distinguish Second Amendment is the nature of the standard governing challenges. Rejecting means-end scrutiny in favor of history and tradition, the court in Bruin set out a two-step framework for adjudicating challenges to firearms regulations. Notice what they're claiming here is this isn't fair. This is different. Remember, we talked about this. If these courts didn't suck, and if these blue states and these Democrats and these filthy commies didn't suck about banning guns all the time, we wouldn't have to have such ridiculous fucking things in place. But they do. So this is the result. This is what you get. You reap what you have sown. So this is the problem here. This is the problem. Yes. KJ 8840 is correct. Self-defense from the government. That includes the judicial branch. I'm not, you know what? We're gonna go full string. So I'm gonna say this from the full fucking chest. You know, judges are part of the judiciary. They are a branch off the same tree of government. You know, if you have to protect yourself against the government, it may be multiple parts of the government. Do with that as you will, chat. Do with that as you will. But that's why we talk. That's why we talk about tradecraft on this channel. And some fieldcraft. We talk about it, brainstorming things, chat. That's why we do that. That's why we do it. You never know when you have to take that little nugget. You file all the way in the back of your brain. You went and you're like, I'm going to put this back here for a rainy day. And you closed it up. Well, maybe that day it starts raining and you open it up and you go, boo, boo, boo. Oh, I remember this. Just saying. Just saying. Just saying. Full Francis E. Deck. Yes. Yes. Very true. Very true. So what do they do from here? So they point out the courts must first ask whether the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct. If it does, the Constitution presumptively protects it. At that point, the government must demonstrate the regulation is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Only if the government carries that burden, and notice, even if the government carries that burden, may a court decide, meaning it doesn't have to, but it can conclude the individual's conduct falls outside the Second Amendment's unqualified command. So may is different than shall or must. It means you have the right. So they talk about in assessing this, you have to find things, you should consider the jurisdictions in which they were adopted. Are they relevantly similar to modern law? But remember, you don't have to make the exact same identical thing. Relevantly similar requires of how it restricted the keeping of arms and why they restricted the keeping of arms. They say because states were not bound by the Second Amendment until the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, we may rely on 19th century statutes to shed the prevailing understandings on this. And they're also citing Hamani. And guys, that was the weed and drug case the Supreme Court just did. They also cite, quoting Bruin, they also cite Wolford. And they say the adoption of the 14th Amendment may be a relevant time period for purposes of ascertaining the Second Amendment's meaning. Yeah, people they just got done fighting a war and black people were being abused. Yeah. Well, anyways, let's get on to this and see how this goes. Let's see how this goes here. So we turn now to whether or not the 30-round magazine and AR-15 bans pass muster. We will presume, for purpose of today's ruling, the regulated items are arms under Beavis. Remember, that was the thing the Seventh Circuit kept ignoring. What are arms technically? And they said, basically only a gun is the arm, but not the accoutrements and equipment and everything necessary to make the gun an arm. But it was required. It was required. Remember, for example, you need magazines for a modern gun. For an AR-15, that's like tires on a car. They're disposable, and without it, it doesn't work. It's a consumable item. And they say, we will assume for purposes of today's ruling that it's presumptive. It's presumptively entitled constitutional protection. And move to the second step. And notice, this is where they're going to come up with their bullshit. They say, in short, legislators have long imposed restrictions on particularly dangerous weapons. And the act is but another chapter in that. Well, let's go on here. And they say, little has changed since we held in Beavis. The act satisfies Bruin's historical inquiry. To be sure, the parties developed the record in the years since Beavis. But that development went almost exclusively to step one. By contrast, the historical laws in the record and the parties' arguments about them remain essentially the same as they stood at the preliminary injunction stage. And they said, indeed, notable intervening developments favor the defendants. First, they talk about Rahimi, which clarified that Bruin's standard cannot be misunderstood to mean modern firearms regulations require close founding era comparators. I mean, they don't have to be exact. But remember, it's the how and the why. But they also cite United States v. Rainier. That's out of their own circuit. Once again, they're just reinforcing themselves. And second, every circuit to have confronted the issue has agreed with our conclusion that legislators may ban AR-15s and large capacity magazines. Well, where do they start with? What are the places they do? Oh, okay, I don't know. Ocean State Tactical versus Rhode Island. The First Circuit. What do they cite other ones here? Duncan v. Bonta, the Ninth Circuit. And then the District of Columbia. Wow, chat. That's how that works. Wow. It's like, oh, wow. Did we check in the other circuits like the 5th Circuit or the 11th Circuit? No. How about, oh, no, we've got stuff that does this. And real quick, chat, we got to address this. I'll get some other stuff here in a second. Kevin Faulkner for $20. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Says, wish you a camping trip with the community. Maybe when it cools down some. Well, actually, if you guys are interested in that, over on Future Conflicts, Joe Dolio and NC Scout, Matt, over at Brush Beater Store, they do up at Camp Ponderosa up in Montana, or I think once we get to the wintertime, they come down south into North Carolina, And Matt runs his classes on patrolling and some other things on if you want to learn some basic concepts of how to do things in the woods. But yes, I would love to talk more about tradecraft, sir. Well, I don't make enough to be called sir. Robin Sage is very useful, and I don't get an opportunity to share that much. Did you go through SFAS, or were you like an extra in Robin Sage? I'm just curious. Not making funny if you were. I was just curious because the way you speak of it, I'm not sure what that implies. But thank you, Kevin. Yeah, there's some things we need to talk about coming up, and if I could lose a little bit of weight, I think I might go to one NC Scouts things, and might be some discussions on stuff afterwards. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Oh, you're just an extra. Yes. Thank you. Okay, you were just the extra. If you guys don't know what I mean by the extras, Robin Sage is what the Green Berets final exercise is as part of their Special Forces course. And, they go through assessing and selection. And it's part of it is they have to build and fight in a civilian populace, evade enemy forces, and help build up the Pineland resistance. And they do it in rural North Carolina. And what they do a lot of times is they pull in people from like the 82nd and other Army units and have them play as, people that have to get trained up because technically they don't have the same skill sets that the Green Berets do or the Green Beret trainees do. So that's a thing. So Rocket Raccoon says, why are you dropping a TOS, Pepe? I don't know what people are dropping here, but the Sizzler's better than Ponderosa. Yeah. Har. So. But anyways, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, that's something that may be done there. Yeah. So the movie War Machine, but with the Army Rangers. No, if you guys have actually never read about Robin Sage and how they do it, it's actually really cool. People in the community play the resistance, and they have to interact and like sneak around. And like you would just your day job, you do your day job, and then you come home at night and you're in the resistance, helping as an actor, training them. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. One of the guys, when I was in college, he was at ROTC, and one summer he got to go do that and got to go be an extra in Robin Sage. He said it was a lot of fun. So, pretty neat stuff. But notice, going back to this, look at all these cocked circuits. So they say, in any event, we remain persuaded by the unanimous circuit consensus. Notice they don't cite the Fifth Circuit or anything else. But also, there's no assault weapons bans in the Fifth Circuit or in the 11th Circuit. Using one or another label dangerous, unusual, unusually dangerous, especially dangerous, capable of unprecedented lethality. Based. I have a safe full of unprecedented lethality, chat. Think about that. Think about if you own an AR-15, it's unprecedented lethality. You know what? If you were to take it back in time, you could show up at the Battle of Cowpens and just walk into the middle of the field and just go combo breaker and just start hosing down British people. Like what an awesomeness. Unprecedented lethality. Godlike. Holy shit. Multi-kill. That's even better. Multi-kill. Double kill. Unprecedented lethality. That would be best. That would actually be really cool if they put Unreal Tournament. If you're out there, put that in the next game. Unprecedented lethality. Oh. So, let's see here. Erica says, so LARPing. It's LARPing, but this is the only, so the Green Beret's purpose is to be inserted into a hostile land, be able to link up with friendly forces, and an operational detachment alpha team, so an ODA of 10 Green Berets, could train and turn the 10 of them could turn 500 people out within a matter of months into a fully effective fighting force as a force multiplier. And as they go, could train more and more and more and more people, in addition to themselves doing direct action work and all that fun stuff. So yes, the only way you could do that is you LARP in a full-time setting. It's a military exercise. But yes, it's LARPing technically. So they talk about these courts have coalesced around a large overlapping set of historical regulations. God, I need to have that clipped. I need to make that a short. Overlapping set of historical weapons regulations targeting weapons whose dangers stand out. These courts have further concluded for the AR-15 in large capacity magazines. You know, Ocean State, Lamont, Duncan, Hansen, Bianchi. And given the grounds already covered, we think it unnecessary to reiterate the analysis of each state, which spans from the pre-founding going armed laws, which, remember, chat, they're trying to claim you can't go out with a gun because it may scare people. That's not what those laws were meant for. Through today's machine gun ban. So they say, although we adopt the court's well-reasoned analyses, we focus instead on the leading example of this regulation. Regulations on the Bowie knife. Or as one Reconstruction era court called it, the instrument of almost certain death. That's right, chat. The Bowie knife. After Jim Bowie, also known as the Arkansas toothpick, if you've ever heard of one. The Crocodile Dundee knife. Like, oh, this is a knife. I got your knife. And chat, if you're unfamiliar with the Bowie knife is a style of knife based on blade profile and other things. This is a knife. This is a Bowie knife. There are various kinds. It's not for David Bowie. Not David Bowie. No, from Jim Bowie. Jim Bowie fought at the Alamo along with Davy Crockett and died. He was famous for having a knife developed the style with the drop point on it. But it is a traditional style of knife. And yes, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term Arkansas toothpick, but that is what they're called. And it's fucking hilarious because I love that term. You know, when you say it to a foreigner, they're like, what is that? Yeah, that's a small Bowie. Yeah, the first one's a very small one. The second one is what a traditional Bowie knife would be. It's a bigger knife. It's almost like a longa messer. If you're like talking about kind of like in HEMA or German, like a long knife. It's kind of one of those. It's a long knife, but not nearly a knife as a sword. As a gladius, no. A gladius would still be longer. A gladius would be almost to an arming sword length. But a Bowie knife is still pretty big. So, and you can do a lot with the Bowie knife. It's meant to be a fighting knife. It's meant to be a knife for everything. Chopping, cutting. You could strap it to a. You could strap it to a. Not. You could. It's like a Rambo's knife. You could strap it to a stick and use it as a spear. Yes, a Bowie knife is fucking Americana, 100%. It's a screwdriver. It does it all, chat. It does it all. Kitchen knife rescue. I figured you'd be here, man. Yes. Yes. Your K-bar has size envy. Yes. A K-bar is it is a derivation of the Bowie knife in pattern and profile. Yes. It can julienne fries. Yes. Yes, you can pick your one Arkansas tooth. Yes. All right. So notice that's what they're focusing on a knife ban. And once again, guys, knives got banned the same way guns do. Oh my God, they're so scary. An instrument of almost, and look at this one, an instrument of almost certain death. If I stab you with any knife, it's an instrument of almost certain death. All knives The knife anybody would carry on the frontier would be a knife that was going to kill you. If I took the drop point off it, made it a Tonto profile, it's a knife of certain death. Walk around with like a Wakizashi. You know, like there's all kinds of things you can do with it. And actually, it's almost fair. You could consider like a Bowie knife almost like a Wakizashi in size. Not like the big Wakizashis, the smaller ones. But it's you know, this is what they're focusing on, guys. This is what they're focusing on now. Yeah, I mean, it's the point of a knife to kill people. Yes. You want to try to tickle their spleen. Popularized in the 1830s, Bowie knives came in a variety of forms, but its purest form, a large knife with a clip point, making the tip more piercing. No, making the tip easier to pierce would be probably the better way to say that. But yes, from the Knife Collector's Guides. These features combined with technological shortcomings, plaguing the area's prominent firearms, which require the user to carefully reload after every shot, such that one missed shot could leave the user defenseless, made Bowie knives a popular choice for fights and duels. Really, anybody. You would always, anytime you're doing stuff, men carry knives for a very long time. It was part of your everyday carry. You carried a knife and you carried a gun. And if you couldn't afford a gun, you at least had a knife. And the knives you had were big fucking knives, so you could defend yourself with them too. But I mean, look at, you know, a lot of places. How many of you guys still carry a knife every day? It might be a folding pocket knife, but it's still a knife. But yes, they were used for fights and duels. It says, contrary to the dissenting opinions efforts, often without citation, well, to conclusively link Bowie knives to criminality, Bowie knives were both widespread and used for lawful purposes. They were. Everybody used them. Everybody had big fucking knives back then. Everybody did. I mean, Jesus Christ. Where's your citation that everybody had a knife back then? Do you have any peer-reviewed studies for that? Huh? Yeah. That's what they're doing here. That's what they're doing here. That's what they're doing here. Do you have any peer-reviewed studies for that? Fucking just Chief Judge Destiny on the bench. Yeah, I mean, think about it. Your bayonet is a giant knife. And the bayonet was actually a common piece of a rifle when you would buy a musket. It would come with a bayonet, a socket bayonet. A bayonet's a big old fucking knife. Generally doesn't have an edge. It's more about piercing and thrusting. But it's still a big fucking knife. So, and they say one expert in the history of arms in America explained the 19th century European visitors who ventured beyond the Appalachians found the Bowie knife such an integral part of the American way of life they felt compelled to comment at length on accounts of their adventures. In many communities, no man, whether hunter, gambler, or tradesman or political leader, felt himself fully clothed without one. Yeah. Notice. They say here, they say, contrary to the dissenting opinion, to link Bowie knives to criminality, they say, however, Bowie knives were both widespread and used for lawful purposes. They're saying there's no citation to it. Yet, literally right here, they acknowledge there's a fucking citation to it. They acknowledge that everybody had one. Everybody wasn't a criminal. Do you understand how that works? Do you understand how that works, chat? Do you understand how retarded these guys sound right now? Because this is what they do. They sound tarded. They sound tarded. And hold on, 1917 bayonet? Oh, child. Hold on. No. Better Enfield bayonet out there. Hold on. The 1917 Enfield bayonet? No, chat. There's a better one out there. The pattern 1907 Enfield bayonet. Why? Because they made it in 1907. The 1907 pattern bayonet for a short for an SMLE chat. Look at this. Look at this bad boy. This is not real. This is a repro. But still, this is a knife. This is a knife. There you go. 1917 pattern bayonet. Get the fuck out of here with that. I will say, when you put it on the end of an Enfield, it's fucking nice. There's a lot of range with that. So there you go, chat. There you go. That's a short sword, yeah, but it's nice. It's nice. So, but I mean, think about it. That's 1907. You had those. I mean, just ridiculous. But also, you could fit like a World War I 1903, the bayonet for the 1903 Springfields on a Garand. And it's like a fucking spear, too. Yeah. I bit a reach with that pig sticker. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Oh, you could show knives on screen. That's not a problem, guys. You guys could show you could show knives on screen. That's not a problem. YouTube does not have a ban on knives, just guns. So this is just, it's a knife. It's a knife. Don't be scared, chat. Think about how many sandwiches you can come with at the same time. Problem is, this doesn't have an edge. This doesn't have an edge. This would not be an emo friend's best thing here, chat. This is not emo friendly. This is not emo friendly, chat, because it doesn't hurt. Look, doesn't hurt because there's no edge. You're not meant to put an edge on this. You're not meant to put an edge on this. It's the point. It's the tip of the bayonet. This is the part you menace with. This is the part you menace with right here. This is what causes the hate and discontent in your fellow man right here. That. So that's what matters. That's the point. So I'm edging. Yes. Jesus Christ. All right. All right. So they point out that similarly, the historian who wrote the book on Bowie knives noted they were widely carried by Americans of all stripes. So they were for lawful purposes. They were widespread for lawful purposes. They're widely spread for lawful purposes. Yes. They served everyone equally, upstanding citizens and villains alike. Yes, everybody. Bowie knives were commonly present in many areas of the United States. Yes. Guys carried, yes. Leave no question. Bowie knives, they actually acknowledge the calling it the Arkansas toothpick. And similar knives were a common part of American life until well after the Civil War. They were a common part of American life until the 1900s, until the frontier was dead. And the West wasn't actually dead until World War I would probably argue. Till the Roaring 20s. The West was still the West was slowly dying then, though. But yeah. Knives were suitable for self-defense and typically possessed for self-defense. Then why are we using this to justify a ban? Why are we using this to justify a ban? This doesn't make any fucking sense. Oh. It don't make no sense, chat. It don't make no sense.
It just don't make no sense.
I don't understand it, guys. I don't understand it. I am really, really confused. I am really confused. And while we're at it, we have a new collection. We have a new addition to the Clip Barn.
I'm done shilling the CIA propaganda. Never goon.
That's right. That's right, chat. Never goon. So, when do my mestizo lawyer billboards go up? I prefer the term mustee, not mestizo. Anyways, the original knife made for Jim Bowie was a large, heavy knife suitable for both self-defense and general utility in the woods. Noting the gun or pistol melee, yeah, blah, blah, blah. The Bowie knife's difficult to defend against. Yeah, it's really hard to defend against a big old fucking pig sticker. The hunting served as another lawful purpose. They say most Americans in the 18th century also thought that the codified Second Amendment was important for hunting, particularly for those moving out west, an important source of sustenance. Also, the people out west were shooting fucking Indians who were trying to scalp them and kill them. But their large blades wreaked particularly bloody and gruesome injuries. So did guns. Legislators responded accordingly, enacting criminal prohibitions that often authorized imprisonment. Some jurisdictions banned the carry of Bowie knives with narrow exceptions or none at all. Others prohibited their concealed carry. Oh, so some places you could carry them just on your belt. Okay. Really? So it sounds like there's no clear consensus. There's no clear consensus here on what you can do. While these restrictions targeted ones did what public, others burned one's ability to own knives for use in private. Such as by banning them or imposing burdensome and sometimes prohibitive taxes. They talk about $100 tax per sale, which is the equivalent of several $1,000s today. It would be a $200 per year tax on Bowie knife sellers and 10-year on the carriers. That's a lot of money in 1838. The dissenting opinion seeks to undermine a reliance on the Texas, Arkansas, and Arizona carry bans, but it misapprehends these statutes. Oh yeah, I'm sure he got it wrong, bro. I'm sure he got it wrong. The dissenting opinion first claims that these statutes permitted carry for self-defense, but their exceptions were narrower. The Arizona statute accepted only one who has reasonable grounds for fearing an unlawful attack on his person, and the danger is so imminent and threatening as not to admit the arrest of the party about to make such an attack upon legal process. The Texas statute employed a similar standard. In other words, neither statute permitted carries for self-defense generally. They allowed it only for those with a heightened and urgent need. But you wouldn't allow it for that anyway. Are you acknowledging I have the right to carry a weapon in immediacy? No, you wouldn't allow that anyway. So let's not act like that's important. That is a distinction without difference for you people. That is a distinction without difference. Yeah, so carry a tomahawk. Yes. Yes, EDWR for $20. Quoting the great Stonewall Jackson, who may not have been the best, but was very good at Leroy Jenkinsing things. Yes, as he said, the bayonet must be for the Virginian what the sarissa was for a Macedonian. That the big long spears they carried in pikes in Alexander's time. If the Yankees once dare foot set in Virginia, we must show them the bayonet. Train them with the bayonet, Captain White, and we shall keep our freedom. Thank you, EDW After, for $20. I take it good says, remember Gettysburg threatened to charge anyone who brought guns to the cemetery. I think you mean Tombstone. Longstreet was better. Well, yeah. Stonewall Jackson is really good at going all Leroy Jenkins. He was overly aggressive, but that was something the Union generals had was temerity. They were very timid, and that's why he was really good. But other than that, that was his own. He's like Rommel in that regard. He was very aggressive when nobody else was, and that makes you look like a rock star. So. And then they say, they struck down, and they say it struck down a New York regime under which concealed carry lights are available. Only there's a special need for distinguishing from that of the general community. So notice they're trying to say, well, actually, although to be fair, they're pointing out that all these carry laws are illegal. Because the dissent says they're limited. Well, what did Bruin say? Special protection doesn't count. So all this doesn't matter. All this doesn't matter anyway. But the cognitive dissonance, they want to just ban these, and they're going any length, and they're talking past this. You're like, wait, I just said that's something wrong. And they're just going to pull a Destiny and blow right by it. They're just going to go right by it. Because that's what they do here. That's what they do here. And they say, ultimately, their statutes meaningfully burden the right to armed self-defense. Yes, and they shouldn't. They claim that the Arkansas statute did not apply to coveting Perrick because of exception for carrying any weapon when upon a journey. And they say they ignore the meaning of journey. They say if journey were synonymous with public carry, to possession on wearing in any manner would be sapped of all meaning. Instead, journey meant something far more narrow. The exception for journeys of the state prescribing the concealed carry is to enable travelers to protect themselves on the highways or in transit through populous places. Well, guess what? We're all journeying through cities. We all live near cities. Not to allow them the privilege of mixing with the people in ordinary intercourse about the streets in an armed manner, on which a sudden fit of passion might endanger the lives of others. But if I don't live in your town, I'm allowed to carry it through. That makes no fucking sense. As long as I don't live there and I'm not intending to be there, I could pass through you with it because apparently I'm not going to have any problems. But people might have problems with me. I don't know. And they say travelers do not need weapons while stopping in towns any more than citizens do. They should lay them aside unless the delay be slight and the journey soon resumed. You know, and notice, you guys remember, this is, judges don't like to let people go about armed. They're pussies. It's from 1891. Cucked judges back then. And also remember, in the 1890s, they've been dealing with Jim Crow and armed. You don't want the black folk running around armed either. For these leftists talking about racism in the courts, they're allowing the racism in these places, saying, well, we can't let the Negroes have guns and we can't let them carry fucking knives. So we'd better just fucking not allow anything here. And it's like, wow. Wow. Isn't that interesting how they do this? The exception for journeys was designed to permit, when necessary, to defend against the perils of the highway to which strangers are exposed. And that's where the term highwaymen comes from, chat. Highwaymen were the robbers and brigands who would hold up people along the highway. As Willie Nelson once told us, he was a highwayman. And along the coach roads, he did ride with a sword and pistol by his side. And they say contemporary court decisions rejected Second Amendment challenges. And they talk about a case here in Tennessee. They sustained over the objection a conviction for carrying a concealed Bowie knife in 1840. And yet, Tennessee later upheld another conviction of carrying a similar knife, though this defendant was on statutory, not constitutional grounds. And they say the design of the statute was to prohibit the wearing of Bowie knives and others of similar description, which, the experience of the country had proven to be extremely dangerous and destructive to human life. The carrying of which by truculent and evil-disposed persons often ended in assassination. Based! Think about carrying a gun. Yes. Yes, the cause, correct. Yes. Urban style individual. The quote, Philip Burnell. That'll be clipped. That's fine. I said nothing wrong. Texas weighed in on the enhancements for homicides committed with a Bowie knife. Okay, in doing so, the court stressed the knife's great danger, calling it an exceedingly destructive weapon. So if I stab you with anything but a Bowie knife, that's okay. I could take a chef's knife or a carving knife or a cleaver or a goddamn bayonet off of a rifle, of a musket. I can kill you with anything else, just not a Bowie knife. And apparently it's not as bad a thing that you died from a Bowie knife. Also, guys, you can get this on International Military Antiques, IMA. They are the ones selling the repros of these. I don't know if they still do, but also the paint flakes off pretty good on this, getting you the OD tip, and then up here, the OD paint on as well, but it stayed black. So it's kind of nice that like the paint flakes off it in a way that looks like it's been worn and used. So when they say contrary evidence limited, plaintiff highlights the Supreme Court's Georgia decisions in Nunn v. State, which upheld an ambiguous statute to the extent it prohibited concealed carry, but it struck down open carry. Most fundamentally, Nunn is just one case. Justice in Bruin, the court refused to give disproportionate weight to a single statute in a single pair of state court decisions. We refuse to place on Nunn more weight than it could bear. Furthermore, it's hard to discern what, if anything, we can draw, which conceded the Second Amendment as a right to keep and bear arms of every description. A view inconsistent with the court's pronouncements in Heller that machine guns and sawed-off shotguns are not protected. And this is the problem when courts have to make compromises. Remember, chat, when it came to Heller, Anthony Kennedy was the swing vote. And Antonin Scalia had to convince him to come over. And he's like, look, bro, I promise. We're not going to talk about machine guns or sawed-off shotguns. Scout's honor, I promise. And look what it fucking does. This is how it bites you in the ass down the road. This is how it bites you in the ass down the road. And this is just rough. This is just rough. So, yes, people have been strangled. Hands must be banned. People have been kicked and stomped to death. Boots must be banned. People have been hanged and lynched. Rope must be banned. And they cite the Bianchi case out of the Fourth Circuit. And they say none is an outlier of little value in discerning the nature of dangerous unusual. We're going to need a fucking just a nut slap from like Clarence Thomas on this. They say, in evaluating whether modern law coheres with all of this, a court must ascertain whether the new law is relevantly similar. The how and why is part of the right to armed self-defense. Now, what do we get to here? Now, what does this get to here? When they say, does it mirror a well-established historical analog? And they say how the act operates mechanically. Does it burden the right of armed self-defense? They point out like historical antecedents disarmed individuals only temporarily and only after an individualized judicial determination of dangerousness. Well, in Rahimi, that was about the hearings for restraining orders and for domestic violence that you were then prohibited. It says the why inquiry asks whether the burdens imposed by the modern ones are comparably justified. And they say, well, the act is no means identical to the regimes. It doesn't have to be. And that's true. And it says relatively similar is understood to permit different things. So you start with how. So the act operates by imposing targeted restrictions on weapons, leaving an untouched wide variety of other arms, including many handguns, which Heller called the quintessential self-defense weapon. It also applies to Does that mean you're going to repeal all the pistol requirements? No, you're not. It also applies categorically to the population while carving out exceptions for groups like law enforcement. Wow, okay, so the government's allowing the government to do government things. Wow. The dividing line that Beavis noted our regulatory tradition establishes. It also fits within the regulatory tradition of Rahimi because it applies indefinitely and authorizes imprisonment for violations like the Bowie knife statutes. And moreover, the act's burden on the right to armed self-defense is minimal. To be sure, the district court found AR-15s offers self-defense utility and that every round matters in a self-defense scenario. It does. And remember, chat, close quarter battle, CQB. You also might call it, military operations in urban terrain Or as the British Army used to call it, fish, fighting in someone's house. All the rules of CQB and room clearing and urban combat apply to you defending your home. All the rules still apply. All the tactics are more or less, maybe not 100% applicable, but are relevant and require you to understand them. Because whether you might be using, the bad guy might use them. And even if it's just one-on-one, many of the tactics can apply to a single man operating. Something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind out there, chat. So, that is, that is what that goes there. Real quick. Oh, hold on. I gotta switch over here to see some comments. Spud Gun, you're asking a good question. When mentioning the Fourth Circuit, it's written as Fourth F. What's the F for? That's not the Fourth Circuit. When you come up here, we'll go up here and look for this. Look for one of these. Yeah. Fourth F. That is not the circuit. That's the Federal Reporter, fourth series. There are multiple different kinds of court reporters that are out there. You'll see different kinds of court reporting things out there. You'll see actually, hang on, I'll get some. What are some good? There are multiple reporters out there. There's also, you'll see things like the appendix. You'll see like APPX. Those are the ones that don't generally get reported. And then you can find these cases where you'll find different reporters. There's like a Pacific. You'll see cases denoted PAC. There'll be different like Western reporters, and they take cases from larger areas. There's regional reporters that you'll find. You'll see them quite a bit. And it's just a citation thing for it, where you could find it and what it's in, because they collect the cases and then present them for you to look at. So, for example, when they cite the circuits, and we'll go back up here where they cite the circuits. Yeah, here you go. When they're citing circuits, like here you go. So Lamont is 153 Federal Fourth Reporter, 4th edition, 4th series, at page 243. So you have to go find volume 153 and go to page 243 in the 4th series of the Federal Reporter. That's how you find that. And then when you get to like the Supreme Court cases, for example, maybe I'll do this as a video one day. You'll see the United States, like if it's a circuit, you'll see this here, 7th Circuit or something like that. All right. So that's how you'll know where that comes from. And here, when you see the 1st Circuit, that's how they mark it. The 9th Circuit, the DC Circuit, that's how that gets put in there. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense out there, Spud Gun? Because if there's a 4th Circuit, it'll be that. But you'll have all kinds of reporters in the meantime that'll report on things. Like 2nd Circuit, 11th Circuit. And then you see here, U.S. reporter. So you go to, for Himani, you go to volume 608, and it hasn't been actually cited yet properly. But eventually there'll be some case numbers. You'll go to volume 608 of the U.S. reporter, page whatever, and that's where that court case will be. So, for example, this one here, Konigsberg versus State Bar of California. You go to page 366 of the U.S. reporter, which is exclusively to the Supreme Court. So you put all the Supreme Court opinions in there. Page 36, and that's where you go. I hope that worked here. Kevin Faulkner for 20.
Subs. Let's fucking go tonight, chat. Let's go. Let's go. I mean, just got to remember, you are crushing those Grays. And remember, we're just making sure they know they're not welcome here.
You see this? That means not welcome.
That's right, chat. Get to stepping. It is a green neighborhood. If you're not green, get gone. Get gone. Thank you, Kevin, for your support, your generosity. It helps easy. It looks weird, but they don't do it easy. Yeah, I try. What if you had your appendix removed? Heart. What is somebody saying here? Legal citations are weird to you. I don't know. They're pretty easy once you learn them. And maybe, like I said, I'll do something explaining these one night. Yeah, there's a Southwest reporter is a great one. There's Southwest. There's, all kinds of reporters. There's Southwest. There's Northwest. There's Northeast. They're regional reporters, chat. There's Southeast. Those are the big ones. But then there's also like Pacific. There's Pacific reporter. Used to be an Atlantic reporter too. But they do all kinds of different regional reporters. And these pick up like not only federal but state cases as well. There's all kinds of reporters that are out there. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you guys out there. So, gerrymandering the Grays away. That's right, chat. Gerrymander the Grays away. Pray the Grays away. Make America green again is what we're here to do. It's how it works. All right, chat. Let's keep going here. Where did we get to before we stopped? And they say, we accept those findings, therefore accept the act imposes some burden. So they're acknowledging, yeah, it poses a burden, but deal with it. Which, imagine them applying this to voting or immigration. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that to you. They'd say that's different. Well, that's different. They say, we also, of course, agree that self-defense has long been cherished and a closely guarded right. But the burden the act imposes is mitigated by what the record indicates about how frequently individuals actually use AR-15s and more than 10 rounds of self-defense, a matter on which the district court made no factual findings and on which the only evidence came from the defendant's expert. Notice they're citing Ocean State Tactical. And they say depriving citizens of a device that is virtually never used as self-defense imposes less of a burden on the right of armed self-defense than does banning a weapon that is in fact traditionally used in self-defense. Well, if more people had AR-15s, they'd probably be used a lot more. But also, chat, that doesn't mean much because, yes, most self-defense situations is like 5 rounds in 5 seconds at 5 feet. Most of the time, it's like that. But if I have the time and you break into my house, you come into the Hacienda, you come into Martinistan, and me and 2.0 are sleeping, and I grab the Glock 19 comes out, and we're ready to fucking rock and roll with the Streamlight TLR1 on the front, and we're ready to fucking rock. If I can get to the AR-15, I'm getting that. And yeah, I'm not going to go hunting because we don't have a need to, and we'll strong point. But if I have the option of grabbing an AR-15 versus a pistol, you best fucking believe I'm using the AR-15. I'm looking for all kinds of hate and discontent to throw down. Why wouldn't you? It is a far more effective platform than a pistol, even a shotgun. The rifle is the king of the battlefield in terms of small arms. So he says, Streamlight, you don't have a peck of nods? Not yet. But honestly, a flashlight is going to be just as good. in that situation. You know, I could spend the money on other stuff there. But also, apparently, Brush Beater over on on the Brush Beater store is selling the NVS 31s from I forget who makes them, but they're like the 3D printed ones for like $3,300 for dual tubes. It's like fucking crazy. Martinistan, lol. Yeah, that's what it is. I would defend with extreme prejudice. Yeah. Malcolm says, I don't know. I prefer to technically suppress PCC at 45. I don't know. I want the rifle. I want to be able to know I can go through a target. At under 20 yards, M193 ball is going to go through fucking everything, even plate. Unless they happen to be wearing like ESAP, enhanced SAPI plates. I'm going through probably whatever the fuck they got, especially only having like steel body armor. I'm fucking going through everything. But that's like I said, the magazines are loaded up. It's like a fucking trail mix of ammunition. There's like M193 ball, SS109, M855, M856. Then I've got some stuff from Priv Partisan that is some sort of armor piercing. I've got a little bit of everything in that. Like it's like mixed up every 5 rounds. So you know, it's there for everybody. Zakuza says the Harbor Freight Special Light. I have those, but no, clipped onto the Glock is the stream light. The actual stream light. I don't put on the gun I may need to defend myself in the lovely future Mrs. Martin 2.0. I don't use the Harbor Freight one. I have not had a chance to shoot that enough to know it works. But I know the stream light works. So we are taught in the Army that artillery is the king of battle, but the king of the small arms is the rifle, of the pistol and the shotgun. The AR-15 is my nightstand gun. Yeah, that's not bad too. So following Pac Bell reaching out and touching someone, yes. I want their soul to feel the wrong house, motherfucker. I mean, there's that too. Shinobubu says that distance stain for the face. The balaclava is not level 4. I mean, yeah. I mean, like if you like the deal is, I'm gonna say stay away from this room. If you come down this hallway, we will defend ourselves. If you poke your head around the fucking corner, I'm just gonna fucking cut loose. So there's gonna be a lot of things coming your way. Your face, your chest. Maybe I'll shoot the pelvic girdle. I don't know. Trail Mix magazine, pretty much. Yeah, body, head, everything I can. It's a Trail Mix magazine. I mean, it is. It is. Be a man and defend your home with a FAL. I mean, if I had a FAL, I'd be shooting like fucking black tip, M80 black tip out of that, 308 armor piercing out of that. But maybe one day I'll get a FAL. I'll get a FAL and do it Rhodesian style. Shinobuba says walls aren't cover. Doorways can be, though, if there's enough, built up in it. Yeah. Well, 2.0, you'll aim. Yes. Will I slot some floppies? Fuck yeah. Slot some floppies. So they say, according to a report, using more than 10 rounds is extremely rare. Yes, but when you need them, you need them. If you watch, guys, like we've watched these police shootouts. The police fired 160 rounds of that one dude who banged it out with them. And then the guy that was barricaded up in the mountain shooting at the firefighters. When it's time to fucking go, you fucking go. GNF find only 2 such incidents in which a sample of roughly 5,000, those engaged in self-defense, fired only 2.2 rounds on average. It's also quite rare for individuals to use rifles in self-defense. If you allowed more people to carry them, it would be. The same expert's analysis of an online database containing over 1,000 gun use reveals that 90% of defenders employed a handgun because you're not allowed to carry a rifle everywhere. A mere 4% turned to a rifle. But guess what? Everybody who could did. And that's the thing. Every one of these 90% right here, I guarantee you said, hey, man, if I could have given you an AR-15, would you have won in one? I guarantee you almost all of them, except that they were like in an elevator. And they're like shooting at somebody from like the compressed, like low ready, or they're in like a Sewell, they're point shooting. And a guy's like trying to stab them. Except for that guy, most of that 90%, probably 95% of that 90% would have said, oh my God, I wish I would have had an AR-15. They probably wouldn't have even fucked with me. Because if you're walking down the street with an AR-15, you know who's going to fuck with you? Probably nobody. And if they do decide to fuck with you, great. Then you could fucking kick it off in style. Self-defender's choice is when unfettered by regulation. And they say, well, the district court, plaintiffs cited a smattering of online articles reporting self-defense use of item the act regulates. The articles the plaintiff cited are entirely consistent with the defendant's evidence. The defendant expert did not conclude the items are never used for self-defense, only the use is exceedingly rare. The act therefore imposes a limited burden on the right of armed self-defense, comparable to Bowie knives. They claim, though, we're not shifting burden to the plaintiffs, but you are. You are, though. And that is so given that the grandfather clause permitted citizens who already had them to continue to have them, but nobody else. Why can't anybody else own them? So, let's see here. What are you guys saying? Did anyone tell the court that knives aren't guns unless those are the fun gun knives? Yeah, but remember, arms are arms. Arms are swords, spears, guns, knives, armor, shields. Anything you can carry, use. A Morning Star, a Warhammer, a mace. All of them are arms. All of them are weapons. A fucking sling. And they say they object how the act differs to greatly. And they say many of these impose less burdensome regulations than the act, mostly because they regulate only carry or concealed carry. And they say the act, therefore, incomparably burns the rights. And they say they're claiming what the plaintiffs are saying. And they say they accept the premise the act lacks a historical twin. But remember, it doesn't have to be exact. And they say the court invoked the historical tradition of carrying dangerous and unusual things in Heller. And they say that M16s may be banned. And this is the problem with Heller. Fucking Anthony Kennedy, they had to suck him off. So they have all this shit. But remember, like I told you guys, Antonin Scalia was probably never going to let us have, M16s. Anyway. Why? Because these judges are cucks at the end of the day. They are cucky. It's what they do. That's what they do. They say Rahimi, which redefined Bruin, did it really redefine it? Confirmed that a closer match is not necessary. And they point out here that Rahimi is to consider the constitutionality of the when you have the violence restraining orders for the DVs. Sorry, domestic violence restraining orders. Ow. Fuck, it's like I got bit by something outside. Damn. It's like itching like hell right now. I don't know what the hell I did. I didn't get bit. I was just, ow. Fuck, that hurts. I think I got bit by something, chat. Probably going to lose my leg tomorrow to a brown recluse. And they say under the surety laws, and they talked about, remember, they went through these. The Supreme Court has said these are all bullshit. They said these are all bullshit, and the surety laws are not going to work. And they say the Supreme Court stressed recently the primacy of history and tradition does not create a law trapped in amber. And they say the Second Amendment protects more than just muskets and sabers. It permits more than just those regulations identical to the ones found in 1791. And they point out here, once again, they cite Justice Barrett. You know, she says the regulations reveal a principle, not a mold. But they won't accept the why. The defendants want to protect Illinois communities and the public from weapons that pose a special danger to its safety. Okay, well, what about the 500 fucking murders a year in Chicago? What about them? The gators are already nipping at Sean. Bedbugs are a lizard. They get bit by an ant. Ow, there's no ant on there. I'm looking at it. There's no ant there. Fire Knight says I prefer my M4 over the M16. Well, you're going to have to get what you get. Because for a while, like in Maryland, you could only own an AR-15 with an H-bar, like a 20-inch version with the heavy barrel on it. So Clyde has a G36. That son of a bitch. How did he get one? But yeah, like what about in Chicago? They're all using handguns. And they say because every firearm regulation is at some level about public safety. Is it really? Every firearm regulation? Oh, we can't let the blacks own guns. It's about public safety. Slaves can't own guns. It's public safety. Can't let the Indians own guns. Public safety. Are we really going to say that, Seventh Circuit? Wow. I guess we're going there. I guess we count the blacks own the guns. It's a public safety issue. Chat. They say, and they point out, though, the latter is more specific. And this all is justifications consistent with the rationales underlying historical regulations. You know, they say AR-15s with 30-round magazines are indeed particularly dangerous. Far more like the bannable M16 than the quintessential self-defense weapon that we know may not be banned for the entire population, the handgun. There's no dispute that when chambered with identical bullets, the AR-15 and M16 fire rounds at the same velocity, 3,100 feet per second. That is about 3 times the velocity of a standard handgun bullet. There's no dispute the M15 and M16 fire the same ammunition at the same maximum range, about 500 yards, compared to about 50 yards for a 9mm handgun. I mean, effective range? I mean, you can do 100-yard shots with a 9mm. Likewise, the parties agree the M16 and AR-15 have consistent wounding capacities measured by kinetic energy of the rounds. Moreover, plaintiffs don't dispute the state's evidence that .556 NATO bullets commonly fired and by AR-15s and M16s are more likely than slower, heavier handgun bullets to rotate within the body and potentially fragment, which cause additional damage to tissue and organs adjacent to the bullet's entry point. AR-15s are dangerous, not only in the sense that all guns are dangerous, but also relative to semi-automatic firearms. And large capacity magazines amplify each and every one of the dangerous characteristics, but allow a shooter to fire more of these lethal rounds without breaking to reload. Fuck these cocksuckers. Yes. Mate, your bullets are too fast. Fire Knight says, I'm still active duty, so I can't do too much. Personally, I'll go with shotgun and a pistol. Yeah. And yes, there are YouTube videos of Chicago, and you can hear full auto fire. Yes. You can see the kids running around on this full auto. We got proof of that here, chat.
Switchy. No talk. No cat. No talk.
Those are 13-year-olds. Those are 13-year-olds in Chicago with switched on blick. Dude, they got switched on blickies everywhere. They got full auto Glocks. But they're worried about this. Oh. They say we recite these uncontested facts not to just gravity of the harms, to justify the act or engage in interest balancing, but you are engaging in interest balancing. Bruin clearly rejected means-end scrutiny. We recite these facts instead to demonstrate that the act and its antecedents are comparably justified. Really? It sounds like you're saying the ends justify the means. Our ancestors regulated dangerous weapons for specific similar reasons, like the AR-15 being prohibited. Yeah, no. And they say we must address one final point. The district court plaintiffs in dissenting opinion have made much of the fact that magazines are AR-15s and magazines are popular. There are many in civilian hands, and they are in common use. And it says, we do not deny AR-15s are both widely legal and brought by many ordinary American consumers. And they cite the Smith & Wesson case versus the Estados Unidos Mexicanos. It was the Mexican government suing Smith & Wesson and the others. They say, however, we decline to base our assessment on the constitutionally acted numbers alone. They say, we don't need to belabor this, which the Supreme Court's post-Bevis precedents do not address, which our precedents in Bevis and Freeman have forcefully made. Notice they're going to say, well, they didn't make them, so we made them. We add only that the Bruin cuts against the conclusion of weapons common use leaves it immune from regulation. After confirming that handguns are weapons in common use, the court proceeded to undertake an extended analysis of the government's proposed historical analogs. Hardly an obiter dictum. Yep. And they say, before moving on, we must stress a methodological divergence between our opinion and the dissent. The dissent asserts we break fresh ground by not applying the understanding of the only relevant historical tradition the court has recognized: the regulation of dangerous, unusual weapons. But the court, and they're saying the court, that's the Supreme Court, has not set out a framework for which to do this. So we're going to do what we want. And they're saying that we know that because the recent grant of certiorari in cases similar to this one indicates, noting Viramontes versus Cook County and Grant v. Higgins. Once again, guys, this is the Illinois case right here that got cert just now. But even then, they're acknowledging, what do you think the court's going to do? They're going to get it. And then Grant v. Higgins is the Connecticut case, chat. And they say a more nuanced approach. Yes. The Reddit tier takes. The Reddit tier takes now, chat. Speaking of some things here. Jefferson Post says, Gage Gross cuts evaporated bicep. Messed with an AR-15. Yes, it did. Kyle Rittenhouse, when he was doing his shooting that I don't think anybody could recreate if you ran it 1,000 times, scoring hits on everybody. Blew up Gage Gross Krutz's arm with an AR-15. And then no for 5,000 Argentine pesos. Thank you for being here. We got a red boy, chat. Remember, it's red, it's red. Even after this, Argentina still has better gun laws than New Jersey. Softball. That's rough. That's rough. Also, hope you're doing well there, man. Good to see you. Hope your schooling's going well. Hope it's going well down there. Yes, the Supreme Court did consider numbers during Catano, the stun gun case. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Timmy's friend simulator said dreams don't come true in Florida if you're dreaming of an FRT. As long as you haven't brought it with you, you're good. But even then, that's getting addressed as well, so don't worry. Torgo says a red boy is worth less than $1. It's still a red boy. Red boys are red boys. But yes, we're doing the more nuanced approach. Get ready, Chad. It's Reddit time. Oh. Let's say Bruin's recognition of cases implicating unprecedented societal concerns or dramatic technology changes may require a more nuanced approach to its historical inquiry. This consideration, the flip side of the more straightforward inquiry applicable, where the challenge regulation addresses an age-old problem, reflects that the farther today's regulatory challenges get from those perceived in 1791, the greater the need to reason by analogy. They say a nuanced approach enforces our conclusion here. Yes, I'm totally sure. And indeed, this case implicates both of the grounds. The dramatic technological change embodied in an AR-15 has enabled unprecedented societal concern of mass killings speedily carried out by lone shooters. These are not our forebears' arms, and these are not our forebears' calamities. No, they would just massacre whole villages of people, so it's different. From 1791 through the mid-19th century, the ubiquitous firearm was a single-shot muzzle-loaded firearm. In other words, these guns could not fire consecutive rounds. Okay, and then what happened in the 150 years after that? Something to think about. By the 14th Amendment, what was the most ubiquitous thing? A fucking repeating firearm. Someone seeing fired 2 shots would have needed to reload a gun by meticulously loading the projectile and propellant into the muzzle, a process that could take half a minute. Well, if you listen to Richard Sharp, you can do it under 20 seconds. And if you're doing it right and you just spit the ball and you tap it and fire, you can get a lot of shots off. But also, you know what most people did back then if they needed a lot of firepower? They carried multiple guns. Like, I will say this, the Patriots are a great example of that. Yeah, he reloaded a lot, but what did he do? He had a bunch of guns set up, and he used all the muskets. You know, pirates would typically storm. Blackbeard was famous for this. Coming over a boat with burning cannon match in his beard, but also pistols all over him in holsters. He'd be one guy with 6 guns. They say AR-15s with large capacity magazines are a far cry from these. With this combination, a shooter could discharge 30 rounds, each of which travels 5 football fields in half a second, and releases 10 times the energy of a musket ball upon impact. Well, it's a little different, the damage they cause, as quickly as he can pull the trigger. And when that magazine is empty, he can replace it in just a few seconds. In just a few seconds, like less than 2 seconds, you could be reloaded and back up at a fight. Reloading 30 rounds at a fraction of the time would have taken a reload in 1791 or 1868. Nah, you can reload pretty quick in 1868. Even like a Sharps rifle. You know, if you use one of the repeaters, or even a Winchester, you know, you shove a bunch of rounds in and get going again. Taking all together, a modern shooter armed with an AR-15 at 30-round mags can fire almost 60 extraordinarily lethal rounds. They're not extraordinarily lethal. They're not lethal than anything else. A pistol today is also comparatively different. Assuming about 1 pull of the trigger per second, with a few seconds to change out magazines and the time it took to fire a pair of far less damaging shots at the founding. Really? You want to get shot with a musket ball? You're going to lose your limb, probably. And they say, true, there were repeating arms during this era, but most of the 19th century, these weapons remained technologically flawed curios with limited practical utility. Not at all! Are you kidding me? Winchester, repeating arms were in the Civil War to great and widespread proliferation throughout the Union Army. Many Union cavalry troops used Spencer repeating carbines with their tubularly loaded magazines, which they carried literally a whole case of them in a drop leg bag, and they would yank out off their belt a whole pod of tubular magazines and just shove them into the back of their Spencer rifle, fucking close it back up and get back into the fight. It didn't take very long if you had that stuff. You know, it was not uncommon at all. It was not uncommon at all to carry those into battle. I mean, like, those guys were just slinging lead. It wasn't at all uncommon for that. It wasn't at all uncommon for that. So, and I'm not joking, chat. Literally, the Spencer carbine's the one where you shove the tube of them into the butt of the rifle, and they carried a whole pack of them, and they'd yank them out, shoop, throw it in. When it was done, they'd throw the tube away and grab another tube. It was a disposable magazine back then. So, yes, there is a Girondoni air rifle. Was fragile, complex, and impractical. I don't know. Well, Meriwether Lewis brought it with him on his fucking expedition into the unknown. While the 1821 Jennings flintlock was beset by technical challenges. And they were prone to explode if sequencing between the rounds was off. These firearms were exceedingly rare, never penetrated the commercial or military markets. And the Winchester repeating rifle, introduced in 1866, refined in 1873, was not a true semi-automatic firearm. For the day and the time, it was entirely. Notice they skip over the Henry repeating rifle, who Oliver Winchester bought his patents and information off of. But no, in 1858 and even in 1864, a fucking Winchester rifle was like owning an AK-47. You were fucking unstoppable with none of those. They don't even talk about the Spencers. Notice they don't talk about shit in here. The shooter is required to manipulate a lever forward and then backwards as reloaded one round at a time. Yeah, and have you ever seen people operate one of those? You could put a lot of fucking work in there. You could put a lot of work in with a repeating rifle. Yeah, the Henry dropped in 1860. I thought it was 1858, but yeah. They ignore the Spencer carbine, which was widely dispersed. The Henry rifles, which were used on both sides to much avail. So the plaintiff's argument, the capabilities, ubiquity of repeating rifles gradually grew in America, and not as a dramatic technological change, overlooks the extent in which incremental innovation can yield a dramatic technological change over the long run. There doesn't need to be a singular transformation, blah, 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 blah. Fuck these people. They say it doesn't ban them. Technically, other people can have them. The act doesn't ban lever action guns. Unless the firearm is a shotgun with a revolving cylinder. So you can do whatever you want with it. It just can't be a shotgun with a revolving cylinder. So in 1887, out of Terminator 2, that's fine, apparently. That's fine. They say, indeed, the first known mass casualty shooting and at least 10 deaths did not occur until 1949. How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? And I mean, really, there was the... how many people died in the Bath school bombing? Let's see here. Let's see. But the Bath school disaster, the guy killed did a shooting and then set a bomb. I'm pretty sure I could find places where 10 deaths did not occur prior to 1949. This is how the fuck do you know? Yeah, Wounded Knee is a good example. Yes, at the hands of the government. Yes, the Bernstein carbine, the Smith carbine, the Maynard carbine, Colt revolver carbines, Sharps rifles all dropped in the early 1850s. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Imagine you're a Confederate soldier and you run into some Union cavalry and they all hop off their horses and they all just start unloading on you with repeating carbines. That would have seemed like a machine gun. I mean, in fact, during World War I, the Germans thought that the British, when the Germans initially encountered the British Expeditionary Force in 1914, they thought the British were using individual automatic weapons. And why did they think that was happening? because the British troops were firing their bolt action, their SMLE rifles, so fast. They were shooting from a modified grip that allowed them to work the bolt and slap the trigger immediately. And they were working the gun so fast. German officers reported back that they were encountering automatic weapons at the individual level because from the British soldiers firing so fast. But yes, training and equipment, it's going to seem like you're way, way outgunned. So Columbine wasn't a school shooting so much as a failed bombing, yeah. So yes, the Mad Minute is a thing with Lee Enfields. Yes, it is. But it's just pointing out this is nonsense here. If you had never seen like a Henry carbine or a Spencer carbine, and some guy started shooting you at one when you had a musket, it would have felt like today with like a deer rifle if somebody started shooting at you with an AK-47. Completely outgunned. And they say, we don't need to belabor the all too familiar prevalence of these episodes. Don't fucking care. They say the district court's conclusion that mass murder has been a fact of life in the United States since the mid-19th century, accusing defendants of overlooking atrocities committed at groups like Native Americans and slaves. But this asserted problem of mass murder is framed too at a high level of generality, of obscuring distinctions with important consequences for how a legislator might respond. When the Second and 14th Amendments were ratified, mass killings were a group activity, relying on primitive weapons and melee weapons, because individuals lacked the means to inflict mass casualties. Okay. So the response for this, though, they're arguing, was to target armed groups. And that is just what the founding and Reconstruction era legislators did. Say, but where the firepower needed to carry out a mass killing used to come from an aggregation of people, now it comes from an AR-15 and magazines, a problem for which the historical solution is self-evidently unfit. Oh, no, it still works. You just have to take care of people who are fucking off the rocker. And they go through all this, and they say they keep going, and they're never going to change their minds. And they say, they sample mass shootings. 24% involved assault weapons. 63% involved large capacity magazines. Raise the fatality count to 6 and assault weapons and large capacity magazines up to 53 and 80% respectively. And they say since September 11th, the settling deadliest individual acts of intentional criminal violence have been mass shootings based. So they go on and they go on. We don't have to worry about the endorsement affidavit requirement. We're not worried about that here. But in conclusion, they reverse the judgment of the district court and we remand the cases with directions to enter judgments for the defendants, meaning kill it. So there you go, chat. Well, when a court is set on coming to a conclusion, they'll come to that conclusion. Whew, took a little while to get through that, but we did. BobTube for $5 Australian doodle says, knives are legal to carry here if you have a valid reason. No license needed, mate. Just always carry an apple at the same time. Funny. KJ's been a member for 29 months. Says, can the 19th Amendment not be absolute? One would think. Jefferson Post says, Cassius Clay bore his cannons well enough. Pedants. Jefferson Post says, do Illinois and New Jersey results mean a circuit split exists? Yes. But remember, the Supreme Court already took up Viramontes and Grant, so it's not a big deal. EDW Raptor says for $10, is it currently the Steam Train Fest on Steam? Yes. All train-related things are on discount. With a bunch of train-related games on sale, go get yourself something nice. Thank you, EDW. Thank you so much. That is exactly what I need. That is exactly what I need. I just want the fuck. I just want the goddamn U-boat thing to work. Really. That's all I want. That's all I want, man. I just want the U-boat game to work. I really do. That's all I want. That's all I want, man. I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man, chat. Simple man. And then Unforced Eagle for $10 says late. Also, that image in the thumbnails of an airsoft, you could tell by the bolt carrier. I used the best picture I could find. I worked with what I have. It was the closest one I could find when I typed in M4. Actually, I typed in Colt 727 into Google. Because if you search for anything else, I don't need like a railed out behemoth. I just want a simple. I want a simplified setup. So that's all I'm looking for, chat. That's all I was looking for. That's all we're looking for. But let's get on to the people in New Jersey. Iron Knuckles says, praise the Third Circuit and pass the ammo. Yes. Let's get on for those of you in New Jersey. For those of you, the Third Circuit does cover Pennsylvania, but, surprisingly, Pennsylvania hasn't enacted in a assault weapons ban. So, they haven't done that yet, but, give it some time. They might try. But it covers Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, chat. So, for those of you keeping score at home, this is where we're looking at right now. We are talking about the Third Circuit. So we're talking about Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware. And then the U.S. Virgin Islands way down past Puerto Rico. They are covered there. And if you guys weren't aware, Hawaii, Guam, and the Mariana Islands are all in the Ninth Circuit. So, but there we go. And then guys, remember, the Seventh Circuit covers Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. But remember, these two states don't have assault weapons bans, so it didn't matter to them, really. It only matters to this one state, this shithole state. The shithole state. But instead, let's get to this one here. The United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. We are not going through all 192 pages, chat. Let me tell you what. We're not doing that. There are a bunch of dissents. There are concurrences. But let's get to the good stuff. So what is it? It is the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, Blake Ellman and Mark Weinberg, versus the Attorney General and Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police. There's another case, too. There's Mark Cheeseman and Timothy Connolly and the Firearms Policy Coalition, chat, FPC, versus the state police, county prosecutors in Gloucester County, and the Ocean County prosecutor. I think that's where Atlantic City is Ocean County. There's multiple of these cases, guys, and they all got consolidated. So notice this is look at how massive this is. Look, and the biggest thing, chat, you need to understand here. You might say, well, wait, what does all this mean? All these judges. This case was heard en banc. This is the entirety of the Third Circuit. So this isn't like the Ninth Circuit where if you win on a 3-judge panel, they'll appeal to the rest of them. No, this is the entire Third Circuit. The entire, I take it good, says Gloucester. Is that Gloucester? Well, you're not in Massachusetts. Gloucester County is where you live. But this is the entire Third Circuit. So look at all these judges. You see all these judges. Freeman, Chagres, Hardiman. Guys, Hardiman, remember, Hardiman was one of the people, along with Kavanaugh, that was up for nomination. Porter, Mady, Montgomery Reeves. And then Bove. Yes, Emil Bove. That's right. Donnie's boy getting his hands dirty out there for the Second Amendment, chat. Then there's Judge Mascot, Judge, and Judge Chung all filed opinions concurring in part. And then you get to these other judges, Judge Schwartz, Krause, Restrepo, Smith, Krause, like all these judges filed dissentings. This is en banc, chat, all the currently active judges. So this is a victory royale. This is a victory royale. Anonymous Angelo says AC is in Atlantic County. Okay, well, there we go. But yes, this is it. This is it, chat. So yes, New Jersey criminalizes possession of assault firearms and also large capacity magazines. And there were a bunch of different lawsuits challenging this. It challenged all of this. So when it addressed the firearms provisions, the district court focused its analysis on one brand and model of prohibited firearm, the Colt AR-15. It determined that New Jersey's ban on Colt AR-15s, they're applying this to all AR-15s, violates the Second Amendment. When it turned to the magazine provisions, it held the law does not violate the Second Amendment or the Takings Clause. Okay, kind of retarded, but partial. So they talk about the framework of Bruin. We're going to go through all of that here. And they say because the record supports the same result for all semi-automatic rifles, not only AR-15s, we will modify the order so it deems that assault firearms provisions unconstitutional with respect to the full class of semi-automatic rifles. We will affirm that part of the order is modified. So all of them, chat, are good to go. The full class of semi-automatic rifles. So AKs, G3s, pistols, everything, chat. They're all coming back. The magazine provisions, we will reverse because they violate the Second Amendment. Because they violate the Second Amendment, we don't need to address the Takings Clause challenge. We remand these to the district court for further proceedings, and including resolution of the Second Amendment challenge to the other models and types of firearms covered. So notice, they're like, we're going to let you fucking suffer and figure it out, Judge. Yes, it is robust in full. It's tangy and vinegary. And yes, New Jersey passed its assault weapons ban and large magazine ban in 1990, guys. Think about that, 1990. This is old. It's old, chat. It's old as fuck. Predates the federal assault weapons ban. Think about that. Think about this shit. It's old. You guys remember Chris, like this was such a this is such a commonplace thing there that there were, Chris Christie, even put out flyers back in the 90s of to tout, like, banning the assault weapons ban. And like, check this out. Check this out. Like, this is how fucked you are in New Jersey. Chris Christie, running for the Republican side, said they support the ban on assault weapons. They support the ban. This guy, Tony Bucco, fucking base guy, and Mike Carroll, absolutely base, want to repeal the ban on automatic assault weapons. It's dangerous. It's crazy. It's radical. It's based. They must be stopped. Republicans, quote unquote, going after real Republicans. Check that shit out. Yes, conservatives. Yes. Thought I heard something out there, chat. Just look at that. Look at that. That's what we're dealing with. It's institutionalized in these people. The regulations were inspired in part by a high-profile mass shooting in Oakland, California that left 5 kids dead and 33 others injured. And it says guns capable of wholesale destruction are a direct threat to our children. That no one can walk off the street and purchase a gun designed to wipe out the greatest number of people in the shortest possible time. What a bunch of fags in New Jersey. So under the law, assault weapons were a list of over 30 models of semi-automatic rifles, pistols, and shotguns, plus any substantially identical firearm. So they had a whole list. What does an assault firearm mean? Models and types of the Colt, the CAR-15, any firearm manufactured under any designation was substantially identical. Semi-automatic shotguns with either a magazine capacity exceeding 6 rounds, meaning, any like you can't do like a modern 3-gun shotgun with an 8-round magazine, illegal. A pistol grip or a folding stock. So like a Benelli M1 Super 90, couldn't use that. Couldn't use an you couldn't have a Benelli M4, you couldn't have the noob cannon. A semi-automatic rifle with a fixed magazine capacity exceeding 10 rounds, except a semi-automatic rifle which has an attached tubular device which is capable of operating only 22 caliber ammunition. So also a firearm with a bump stock attached. But you are allowed to get a license for an assault firearm. However, you can only receive such license if a state court determines, after a hearing, investigation, and recommendation of a county prosecutor, that the public safety and welfare require the issuance of that license. Fucking think about that, chat. Think about how fucked that is. The prosecutor has to agree you need it. So I was not saying you're old, but like 1990 was 36 years ago. This is an old, as far as assault weapons bans go, this is an old law. Second probably only to California. Probably, actually, I think this went into effect before California. I think California was like 91. So this is like one of the original assault weapon bans. It's a relic. Rest in peace to John Dvorak, a legend in tech, and the No Agenda show in the morning. Well, thank you, Phantom. Phantomo for $5. Why couldn't it be Jim Sterling? Yes. Well, I was gonna say he was doing better than John Batchelor. I used to listen to that guy all the time. He's not doing so good now. He covers shit a couple months out as well. The parties challenging the provision submit, and New Jersey does not dispute, that no one in the state has ever received a license for an assault firearm. I'm surprised. Are you? I mean, really, you're not. Nobody's ever gotten one. Exemptions from the law are narrow. Military law enforcement are exempt from criminal provisions of the Act. And people who own certain assault firearms determined the general to be legitimate for target shooting may register and lawfully possess those firearms only if they satisfy requirements. And they must have purchased them on or before May 1st, 1990. They can be members of a rifle or pistol club that existed before the Act took effect, and have joined the club no more than 210 days after the Act took effect. Notice you have to do all this shit. Owners may avoid liability by rendering those weapons inoperable. But absent licensure, a civilian who knowingly possesses an operable assault weapon commits a punishable crime up to 10 years imprisonment and a $15,000 fine, $150,000 fine. And Chad, if you guys remember in The Sopranos, when Tony got arrested by the state police, by the state government for having a pistol with hollow point ammunition, remember they sent the whole SWAT team. New Jersey is a cucked state full of faggot police officers. There are also provisions to, possess, magazines. The only use of the magazine in connection with competitive shooting events sanctioned by United States Army officials. Meaning, like, if you're on a National Guard base, you can do that. So if you're qualifying, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. When passed in 1990, the Act defined large capacity to being capable of holding more than 15 rounds. But in 2018, in response to the threat of mass shootings, it was capable of holding more than 10 rounds. And they say the 2018 amendments gave New Jersey residents 180 days to voluntarily surrender any magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds, transfer those to someone legally entitled to possess them, render them inoperable, or permanently modify them to accept 10 or fewer rounds, or get them out of the state, or they had to leave the state. They contained exemptions, though, for if you were purchased before the effective date that have a fixed capacity of up to 15 rounds, or only accept a detachable magazine with a capacity of up to 15 rounds. It cannot be modified to comply with the amendment's 10-round limit, which I can't imagine were many guns at all. So when they amended all of this, there was a lawsuit, and they sued. Because it's a Fifth Amendment issue, because you have to surrender them. It's taking away your property. Your property is being taken from you without due process or compensation. Oh, Anonymous Anglo says, you will go to jail if you're caught carrying with hollow points, but you can have them otherwise. Okay. Anonymous Anglo says, they are not appealing or seeking a stay. That's because the Supreme Court's not going to grant one. And yes, there's we'll get to this, but yes, you are correct. Although I would argue it's 100% in effect right now. So don't worry about that. As we keep going here, soon after filing suit, the Pistol Rifle Club's plaintiffs filed a motion for an injunction after hearing the district court denied the motion. And we affirmed that order on appeal. And they say, under a then binding precedent from the United States versus Mazzarella. That guy definitely came from Ireland with a name like Mazzarella. We applied intermediate scrutiny to the magazine provisions. Because remember, this is prior to Bruin. So they did intermediate scrutiny and all this sketchy shit. They say, following remand, the district court granted summary judgment to New Jersey. Once again, this is pre-Bruin. They appealed the order and we affirmed it. And we upheld it. They got certiorari. They tried to get certiorari. After the Supreme Court decided Bruin, it granted the certiorari petition, vacated our judgment, and remanded it in further consideration in the light of Bruin. And notice they have so many lawsuits they're involved in, they have to label them 1, 2, 3, and 4. They say, in turn, we remanded to the district court for further record development, targeted at the legal and historical analysis. They say the Bruin decision also prompted challenges to the assault weapon bans. On the day Bruin was decided, a bunch of people challenged the assault ban provisions under the Second Amendment. 1 week later, 2 of its individual members challenged the assault weapon bans. The district court consolidated all the cases together. Following discovery, the parties cross-moved for summary judgment, saying they both did it. The district court issued an order resolving all 3 cases. And that decision is currently on appeal. The district court began by limiting its assault weapon decisions to the AR-15. And it did so because the information presented to the court focused largely on the Colt AR-15, and each of the other firearms presented nuances the court was not equipped to examine. Really? It's nuanced? Oh, I don't understand guns here. Come on now. I'm going to change Sean from a defense attorney to a prosecutor again. Nope. Not happening. I doubt they'd have me, even if they wanted me. I don't think they wouldn't take me in they would not take me in a year of Sundays. Actually, I think it's a month of Sundays is the proper terminology, but I would never be hired as one at this point. Just that. But remember, in applying all this framework, they determined that AR-15s within the home for self-defense, and they said that the restrictions on possessing them cannot stand since they're inconsistent with the tradition of regulation. So the provisions acted as a total prohibition on a commonly used firearm for self-defense within the home. Isn't it funny how the Third Circuit says that's the case, and the Seventh Circuit says, no, we're not doing that? Isn't that interesting how that works out? Isn't that interesting how that works out? It says, turning to the magazine provisions, it said it was different, though. Because magazines feed ammunition to guns and magazines are necessary, they are arms within the Second Amendment. And they say, if that determined the nation has a historical tradition of restricting certain arms in response to safety concerns. And it was effectively slowing down a mass shooter. Not really, guys. We've watched it. How fast can you change out the magazines on an AR-15? Super fucking quick. So if you have me just start using 10-round magazines, fine. Doesn't really change too much. And the district court reasoned that nothing about Bruin disrupted our takings clause analysis. So the magazine provisions don't violate that clause. All parties cross-appealed the summary judgment order because the good guys won and lost, but also the bad guys won and lost. We consolidated these appeals. We heard the oral argument as a 3-judge panel in 2025. And we heard the appeals en banc in October. And they say, though, and notice, some of us would opt not to decide things because the Supreme Court will address the constitutionality of things going forward with Vera Montez and also Grant. But our decision resolves a question the Supreme Court is not committed to addressing. Yeah, and you have to. We got to do something about this. But to date, no party to these long pending cases has asked us to hold our decision. Nobody wanted to. Everybody was like, we're fucking doing it. And I get it. Full fucking send. Once again, the Second Amendment provides, and we'll do this again because it's important to hear it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. From Heller, reasserting the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, we go through all this chat. Once again, we're not going through all this, carrying it all over again. We need to get through here. We need to get through here about how this works because we're done. We're going to get to their analysis. We're going to get to their analysis because that's what matters most. That's what matters most. Let's get to their analysis, their anal analysis. And it says the first Second Amendment case in which the court used the phrase in common use was United States v. Miller. There, the court upheld a regulation prohibiting interstate transport of short-barreled shotguns, recounting that men called for militia service ordinarily were expected to appear bearing arms supplied by themselves and the kind of common use at the time. Remember, Miller was a bank robber who was dead by the time it happened, and nobody on the Supreme Court at that time, except I think, I forget which justice it was. Only one of the judges had seen combat in World War I, and that was as a JAG officer in the rear. So these ideas that, a sawed-off shotgun's not perfect for combat, I don't know. I'm pretty sure in a trench, a sawed-off shotgun would be absolutely amazing. Whether it's a pump-action shotgun or a double-barreled shotgun. I mean, imagine hopping into a trench with a street sweeper. Short of an MP-18 or a sack full of grenades, a shotgun would be mighty effective in a trench. Although, even with a pump-action shotgun, you might be better off with a sack full of grenades and just start throwing grenades every chance you got. None of them heard the Germans' protest of the shotgun. Yeah, but the Germans were being little fags about it. The Germans were fags. The mighty Huns were crying about shotguns. So the courts used the phrase again in Heller when it sought to explicate which weapons are covered. It quoted the foregoing language from Miller that the traditional militia was formed from a pool of men bringing arms in common use at the time for lawful purposes of self-defense. Yes. It explained that the language from Miller goes to the scope of the Second Amendment right. The law does not protect those weapons not typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes, such as short-barreled shotguns. Well, they have their use. They say later in Bruin, they again addressed and they said that Heller protects only the carrying of weapons that are in common use at the time, as opposed that are unusual in society at large. And they said handguns, well, handguns, maybe dangerous or unusual back in 1791, are in common use for self-defense today. There are gajillions of them. And they say the discussion of in-common points. First, although the court sometimes uses only the three-word phrase, that phrase means in common use for lawful purposes at the time of the modern restriction. The lawful purpose component of this meaning draws directly from Heller, which clarifies that weapons typically used for unlawful purposes fall outside the scope, which probably means switchies. Secondly, the self-defense is one lawful purpose relevant, but is not the only one. While self-defense is central, other lawful purposes bring commonly used weapons within the ambit of the Second Amendment. After all, hunting, that helps. So weapons commonly used for hunting fall under protection of the Second Amendment. Whatever the purpose of using a given arm, the lawfulness of that purpose is a necessary condition of Second Amendment coverage. Third, a weapon that is dangerous and unusual cannot be in common use for lawful purposes. That is, while dangerous and unusual may not be the direct opposite of a weapon in common use, the two descriptors are mutually exclusive. And they explain that the Second Amendment's protection of weapons in common use is supported by historical tradition of prohibiting the inverse, the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons. And it says, so a weapon in common use for lawful purposes cannot be dangerous and unusual. No, but it could be dangerous. I still don't think that's right, but I understand where they're going here. Finally, Bruin makes clear when we assess the common use for lawful purposes, we must consider how a given arm is used in present times. They say in Bruin, any argument that colonial laws prohibit the carrying of handguns because they were considered dangerous could provide no justification for restrictions today when handguns are unquestionably in common use. They're also a lot safer. They say with this understanding, we turn to the issue whether the in common use inquiry is Bruin's first or second step. And that's divided our sister circuits, meaning the other circuits out there. So they talk about knife rights versus Bonta. That's the people suing over California's switchblade ban. It's a very interesting case, guys, and I'm going to try to reach out to the attorneys in that one because it's pretty cool that they're carrying forward the Second Amendment fight over knives, which get basically inconsistent treatment everywhere. They talk about United States versus Wilson from the Fifth Circuit, relying on a pre-Bruin opinion that appears to have considered common use at step one. There's United States versus Bridges, the Sixth Circuit, saying it's step two. National Association for Gun Rights, NAGR, noting that the Second Circuit has understood common use analysis to fall under the first step. The Eighth Circuit, saying it's relied on at common use at step one. The 10th Circuit at step one. DC Circuit says assuming without deciding, step one. Bianchi versus Brown, 4th Circuit again, chat, step one. Beavis versus City of Naperville, step two. No, so just going all over the place here, trying to assert what's going on and how this gets handled. Yes, we love our naggers, don't we, folks? We do. We love them so much. We love our naggers. We love our law enforcement. Only 164 people. Where is everybody tonight? Is this not that good tonight, chat? Is this not that good? Oh, dang. I thought this would be good. Good news tonight. They say before the step one textual inquiry, the court notes two issues that were not disputed. The law's challengers were among the people whom the Second Amendment protects, and that handguns are weapons of common use for self-defense today. Having stated those understandings, the court therefore turned to whether the plain text protects the challenger's course of conduct. Now, they go on here and it says the court used the phrase common use again later in the Bruin opinion, meaning the Supreme Court did. And it says today handguns are indeed the quintessential self-defense weapon. They are. So historical rules would not work to ban them. And they're saying that we are persuaded by the first mention of common use in Bruin, merely disposed of an uncontested threshold issue in the case. The court did so before turning to the step 1 analysis. Later during its step 2 discussion, the court actually relied on common use. We will do the same. Now they say it's important because common use appears nowhere in the Second Amendment's text, nor is it an inherent part of the definition of the term arm or arms. Arms are weapons of offense, anything that a man wears for his defense, or takes into his hands, or to use in wrath to cast at or strike another. So basically anything used for low energy. So I think we're pretty high energy tonight. Didn't even acknowledge my spurging about the Illinois 7th Circuit stuff. Deal with it. We're not doing Illinois spurging. We're not plight spurging night, chat. We're not plight spurging. We are not plight spurging. Oh, chat, that's so funny. Let me see here. What is going on here? Oh, that's why that dirty gypsy from New Zealand's on. You can get more views here, rips and packs. Yeah. No, it's funny. I was just curious. I'm like, damn, am I even like getting profiled by YouTube? And they point out Wolford, and guys, remember Wolford versus Lopez in Hawaii. Arms to mean any weapon customarily used for offensive or defensive purposes. Common use has no bearing on those definitions. So while between the step 1 textual inquiry and common use is tenuous at best, common use fits logically in the consideration of analogs. And they go on to say we must consider how and why because of Rahimi. They say whether regulation restricts a weapon in common use for lawful purposes is a necessary part of how. But then you also have to address the why. Remember, you have to say, how does it restrict things, but why is it restricting things? You have to consider both parts. So it's a 2-part test with then other subparts. So we go on here and they say, for all these reasons, we will address common use at the second step. So they spent all this time explaining you what they're going to do. Now, this is where they say, look, in the initial case, they only looked at the AR-15. The plaintiffs contend this is improper, and it's like, can we address the scope of our analysis? They say, we agree that we need not address only AR-15s, but there are 2 reasons why we didn't cut on issue a decision that addresses all weapons covered. First, the evidence offered was focused heavily on AR-15s. The record about other weapons classified is too sparse to support the analysis required. And the limited record may be the result of the scope of the challenges. In their complaint, they expressly declined to challenge a prohibition on bump stocks. And at summary judgment, they clarified that they don't challenge the New Jersey statute, which pertained to semi-automatic rifles, but fixed magazines exceeding 10 rounds. Only the element plaintiffs challenged the assault weapons firearms provision as to all weapons. So notice because nothing worked right, everybody did a little bit different. They all were worried about getting slaughtered. Remember, chat, if you ask for too much, you can lose. So you try to be reasonable. You try to be modest in what you're going to grab from the court. But sometimes you got to go big or go home. And it says, nonetheless, the record supports us a ruling as to all semi-automatic rifles, not just AR-15s. The AR-15 is a style of semi-automatic rifle, but several manufacturers sell largely interchangeable rifles based on the AR platform. And all covered semi-automatic rifles share common features. There's no evidence an AR-15 is meaningfully different than any other banned rifle. Well, the thing is, it's made by Eugene Stoner, and it works the best. The rest of them suck in face-to-face. And say, plus, New Jersey neither disputed the AR-15 is substantively identical to other banned rifles, nor argued it should be treated differently. But they also point out they all share telescoping stocks, pistol grips, and flash hiders. Yep. A G3, a FAL, they all do the same thing. Oh, who's messaging me? Stop! Let me see here. What the hell? Who just messaged me? I hate Discord. It like beeps all the time and you try to shut them all off, but you can't find them all. And determining whether the modern regulations here, and they go on, they say the record contains sufficient information as to assess the largely interchangeable firearms covered, but it lacks the evidence and factual findings about semi-automatic pistols and shotguns. So we're going to rule on assault weapons for rifles, but we won't go further. So they're only doing that, but it's like, you can have an AR-15, but you don't get a shotgun. You can't have a Sega shotgun. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Yes. It's weird how you do that. So what do they get into here, though? They say the textual analysis is straightforward. All agree about 2 of the 3 subsidiary questions. Plaintiffs are among the people with whom the Second Amendment protects. And New Jersey's law restricts the keeping and bearing of semi-automatic rifles. The only question is whether those firearms are any form of arms. And it says, like Wolford, Heller defines arms broadly. Once again, anything you could take in your hands or use in wraith to strike or cast at another. Notice, isn't it interesting? They're literally using the same cases and the same quotes just to attack each other. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how that works? They're literally attacking each other with the same things. And you can see how honest the one side is versus the other. You can see how dishonest the Seventh Circuit was, and you can see how honest the Third Circuit is with applying stuff here. They point out that arms covers the general definition, covers modern instruments that facilitate armed self-defense. So that, I would argue, arms also includes, like if you're wearing body armor, or if you have a chest rig, or if you have means to carry your weapons and equipment. So like load-bearing gear and load-bearing equipment. And they say because semi-automatic rifles are firearms, they are arms, thus presumptively protects individuals' rights to keep and bear them. So then they come to and notice they take care of that quick. What about the second step? So they go to why was this enacted? Remember the why. There's why and how. So they were worried about guns capable of wholesale destruction. Thus, the regulations at issue, they didn't want people getting guns like this. They seek to bar people from misusing weapons to harm or menace others. And they say that is a purpose that fits comfortably within our nation's tradition of firearm regulation. It can be traced back to common law surety and going armed laws. They say in Rahimi, the court reviewed these, and it explained that the laws that targeted the misuse of firearms by preventing violence before it occurred is okay. And they say these examples show that since the earliest days, regulations barring people from misusing guns were common. Next, they look at how it burdens. And they say the bar for the issuance of the license is high. And once again, the record contains no evidence of anybody ever receiving one. They say there are no exemptions for members of the public. The laws only carve out for certain assault firearms to be legitimate is for target shooting purposes. But once again, those are all the limits that occur before the ban, and all of that happens. So they say in some, the narrow exemptions and obtainable licensing standards amount to a de facto ban on the possession of semi-automatic rifles. And it's funny because in the Seventh Circuit, the state of Illinois was considered as giving a de facto ban to concealed handgun licenses, the way they were treating their populace. This is probably 10 years ago now. And it got so bad, the Seventh Circuit actually told them, if you don't allow people to get concealed carry licenses, we're going to declare your laws null and valid, and there won't be any law in the book stopping people from carrying guns. So guess what the state of Illinois did immediately? They went ahead and immediately amended their laws to fix that problem. So there is a lot that can be done. There's a lot to think about here and how this all works. Now they say, but the characterizations of the law does not end our analysis here. Common law also bears on how a regulation burdens your right to armed self-defense. And the evidence says, are they common use? The district, and here's the awesome part, chat. The district court found there are 24 million AR-15s and similar weapons in circulation. A figure that is surpassed only by the number of registered handgun owners within the United States. Over 20 million rifles, chat. 20 million rifles. 20 million rifles, chat. Keep your rifle by your side, chat. Keep your rifle by your side. Oh, there are many, many more. I guarantee you it's north of 30 million. Maybe close to 40 million now. That doesn't count every single lower receiver out there that was blank. 80% lowers. People who ghost gun at home. 3D printed ones. Everything people have done. You think there's at least 40 million, Sarah? From your lips to God's ears. That's a base number, chat. You know, how many AR-15s and rifles are out here in America? You know, do we have a goal of 50 million, chat? Can we hit it? Can we meet the goal? Do you know anybody who's only got one? No, I don't. I have more than one. A lot of people, generally, when you have one, you get a second one. You know, not to mention all the guns laying at the bottom of lakes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, chat. Oh, yeah. You betcha. You betcha. Think about that. New Jersey doesn't provide any number to contradict the sheer number of rifles in common use. Instead, they argue the features are a legacy of military heritage and not designed for combat. But the record tells another story. Weapons used for lawful purposes, self-defense, target shooting, hunting, and pest control. And their build and design features, the mild recoil, ergonomics, and accuracy make them a good choice for self-defense. They do. It's in fact better, you know, for many people, chat. An AR-15 is going to be a better tool for self-defense if you can employ it. You know, for anybody. If you can get away with possessing a rifle and shooting it, it's more accurate, it's easier to use, easier to load. It's pretty easy to operate. Remember, the military and basic training does to like an 8th grade level of understanding. Remember, you have to have a above 83 IQ. Running an M16 is not hard. We could do it tonight, and I can teach you guys all in 20 minutes how to use one. It's very simple. They work very well. They work very well. The guy who down the mall shooter, Elijah Dickens, with his Glock 19. His lawyer was on the show recently. Nice. Yes. Can we hit the goal, chat? And remember, in New Jersey, that's probably going to be probably 10,000, 100,000 rifles coming into the state. In a different case, we might need to qualitatively examine a weapon's features to determine whether it's a common purpose. And the Supreme Court has suggested the features of certain categories, including machine guns and sawed-off shotguns, and artillery pieces that Congress is subject to regulation, are different from the categories of guns traditionally that have been widely accepted as lawful possessions. And Staples is a big gun case that came out in the 90s, chat. There were a bunch of weird gun cases that came out. There's one out of the Ninth Circuit, Severa versus Lockyer. That was one out of the Ninth Circuit. I remember in college, I wrote a paper my junior year of college on it. There were a bunch of weird cases out there. That's also back when like Samuel Alito was known as Machine Gun Sammy, because there was a case where he said, I actually don't care if this guy owns a machine gun. I think it's based. So they're pointing out, regardless of those lines may be drawn, the many millions of AR-15s in circulation are plainly in common use. Therefore, the regulation functions like the firearm ban at issue in Heller. It prohibits the possession of a weapons in common use for lawful purposes. Based. I like where they're going. In Heller, they had a flat ban on everything. There is no historical support for banning arms that are overwhelmingly chosen by American society for the lawful purpose. Yes. And once again, those knife cases, those probably should have been overturned too. And actually, they do mention at Staples here, deeming ownership of a machine gun but not an unmodified AR-15 is quasi-suspect. Staples is an interesting case. People trying to fight the NFA and losing. A lot of people would do that. What was the AR-15 equivalent of World War I and World War II? World War II, probably the M2 carbine or an M1 carbine with 30-round magazines. I mean, maybe a Sturmgewehr, an MKB-42 type setup, you could also argue. For World War I, that would have been probably a Remington Model 8 or a Winchester 1907. Running one of those with like 25-round magazines would have probably been an equivalent at that time. So that would have really been it. Even for Russia, an SVT-40 or an SVT-38 would have been comparable to an AR-15. But no, the Remington Model 8s, you could get those with like 25-round magazines. M1 carbines, M2 carbines could have 30-round mags. Sturmgewehrs had 30-round mags. Obviously, the MKB-42 did as well. The Pedersen device, yeah, but the Pedersen device fucking sucked. It was very fragile. Getting one of those would be really hard. Eric said, but those had fun switches. Well, not M1 carbines. M1 carbines would have been semi-auto. So, and cops and like special units were using M1 carbines throughout the 50s and 60s. So, but imagine if you put a Sturmgewehr and locked it in semi-auto only, it would still be really fucking nasty. Yeah, so, but yeah, the Peterson device would have been awful to use. That would have been awful. The magazines barely stood in and anything like that. So, oh, you meant the Krauts and Ruskies. Yeah, but still, imagine if you had a PPS 43 in semi-auto. That would still be really fucking good. So, they say once again they considered the Supreme Court again considered regulations intended to stymie interpersonal gun violence. I'm going to say that a tradition of broadly prohibiting even the public carrying of commonly used weapons is a problem. And this is together, Helen and Bruin teach that bans or broad possessions on carrying or possessing weapons in common use for lawful purposes fail to find support in our tradition of regulation. That is so even when regulations are passed the intentions of reducing gun violence. That principle resolves our inquiry here. Notice, they're already like, we're done. That's it. Because the Supreme Court has already evaluated the historical analysis before us today. A prohibition of an entire class of arms that is overwhelmingly chosen, there is no historical support for such a measure. Notice, they just go fucking boom. And they you don't normally see this. They're just like, fuck that. Fuck that, we're out. Fuck that, we're out. P-Dub says, don't forget the Rising M50. Yeah, but I'm talking about when he says the AR-15, semi-automatic weapons. So I'm trying to think of put a Sturmgewehr in semi-auto, because that had semi-auto as an option, or like an M1 carbine, or a Winchester Model 1907, or a Remington Model 8. Those have been in 1944. Those are your options for semi-automatic weapons. And honestly, probably going with the M1 carbine if I had to choose. If I'm on the Allies side, that's what I would take. Like an M1 carbine and a Browning high power. Now, if I had the choice, yeah, I'd fucking take a Sturmgewehr if you could promise me magazines and ammunition. But you can't. So, and what is people? So, and they say even if we were to conduct such an analysis anew, we would reach the same conclusion. They say when a challenge regulation addresses general societal problems that have persisted since the 1700s, our analysis is fairly straightforward. And it says this case exemplifies this kind of straightforward historical inquiry. New Jersey's concerns are about the misuse of weapons to harm and menace others, which is a societal problem that has existed from the earliest days of the common law. Absolutely base, chat. Just dick slapping this hard. And they say, though, I mean, yes, ultimately, Jersey submits our historical tradition shows it can also achieve the aim of preventing firearms misuse through the de facto ban. The state offers other examples. None is a relevantly similar analog to a ban on an entire class of arms. You know, they talk about gunpowder aggregation laws that New Jersey points to are not apt because the why is not analogous. Gunpowder laws were enacted as fire safety measures, not to address firearm violence. Yeah. Because they're worried about you blowing up the neighborhood in a fire. Not that you're going to hurt everybody from violence. And also, here we go, chat. Here is the dick slap. The fucking dick slap. This is that sound you hear right now? This is the Third Circuit slapping their ball sack on the face of the Seventh Circuit. The antebellum and Reconstruction era regulations of Bowie knives. And they say these laws have the same why as the assault weapon ban. They are intended to bar people from misusing weapons to harm and menace others. Nonetheless, they're insufficiently analogous for two reasons. They are too late in time, and none enacted an outright ban on a class of weapons in common use for lawful purposes. Although, actually, they pretty much did. By the Seventh Circuit standards, they did. So this Third Circuit wins again. Again, chat. Again. Just something to think about. All right, chat. We have another super chat from Sean Sandwich Sundry for 500 Kenyan shillings. That's right, chat. 500 Kenyan shillings, which is about $3.87. Says, for the goal. Well, we always have the goal, chat. Ball slaps hurt. Yeah. Well, they should hurt. So. Absolutely great. Absolutely great chat. And send a ball sack slapping the Seventh Circuit. They say we have found the primary time period is the founding era. We must guard against giving post-enactment history more weight than it can rightly bear. You know, and they say regulations from the mid to late 1800s cannot bear much weight. You know, post-ratification practice cannot create a new tradition or contradict founding era practices. If only this were applied to the fucking immigration cases. Huh. If only it's applied to fucking birthright immigration. Oh, well. Oh, well, chat. That's what happens. But even setting aside the timing of regulations, none of those provisions are relevant to the assault weapon one. Take example, the regulations of Bowie knives. Between 1837 and 1893, a majority of states enacted restrictions on them. And this is from a law review article here. They say most of those regulations prohibited the concealed carry of Bowie knives, and some prohibited open carry with the intent to do harm. Because remember, you carry a knife around everywhere you go. And it imposed more stringent punishments where Bowie knives were used in the commission of a crime. But outside of the Western territories, only one law in Georgia banned the possession of them outright. A decade after the law was enacted, the Georgia Supreme Court deemed it unconstitutional and applied to everything and other than concealed carry. None v. state. Chat. Notice, they all come back. They're all fighting with the same laws. They're all fighting with the same laws. Isn't that interesting, chat? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how they do this? You know, a handful of the Western territories prohibited open carry, though some had self-defense provisions. But we heed the Supreme Court's warning about exceptional nature of the Western restrictions. And it says the Supreme Court said, we'll not stake our interpretation on a handful of temporary territorial laws that were enacted nearly a century after the Second Amendment's adoption and governed by less than 1% of the American population, and also contradict the overwhelming weight of more contemporaneous historical evidence. They say even if the bans could support it, you know, they remain in an inapt analog because they didn't target a class of weapons in common use for lawful purposes. I would argue they were in common use for lawful purposes. The Seventh Circuit agrees they were. It says New Jersey didn't show that Bowie knives were in common use for lawful purposes. Instead, it only points to evidence that Bowie knives were widely used in fights and duels. Notice, it's like these guys all fucking talk, but it's true. All the pro-gun people talk and work together. All the anti-gun people talk and work together. That's why these are carbon copies at times. They're just reheating each other's arguments. You know, they just go on and on and on here and on and on here. So, and they go on to say, in the regulations of pistols and revolvers in New Jersey invokes did not restrict the possession. Rather, they limited the concealed carry, or in a few cases, the sale of those guns. But even then, that's going to have to get dick slapped. That's going to have to get dick slapped, chat. We can't have that. We can't have that. So thus, none of New Jersey's analogs are relevantly similar. And, you know, it's got to be relevant evidence is that it's inconsistent with the Second Amendment. And they say, look, they're just like, this is so straightforward. It also resolves a final question about the structure of the framework as applied here. In step 2 of the analysis in Bruin, remember, you have the step 1, you have step 2, and then from step 2, you then go into step 2A and 2B, the how and the why. So they talk about here, though, the implicating unprecedented societal concerns or dramatic technological changes may require a nuanced approach. And they point out that semi-automatic rifles are technological developments, you know, that have implicated unprecedented societal concerns. They say, as they explained above, you know, misusing weapons has already been addressed. This case falls in the category of the historical analogies are relatively simple to draw. Yes, bad guys are killing people. Well, then there we go. There we go, chat. EDW Raptor for one sub. Thank you. Notice they're just like it. They're like it doesn't fucking matter. This is too obvious. So, chat. Once again, you may not like Trump on a lot of things, but he has packed the court with so many judges. A lot of these guys are Trump judges. They say even if we agree that semi-automatic rifles are implicate unprecedented changes or dramatic technological changes, it could change the outcome. Because you can't, it does not allow us to abandon the inquiry from Bruin. Because you're imposing a burden on the right of armed self-defense. And even if we loosen the structures of the how and the why, you can't do a de facto ban on the possession of an entire class of arms. Now, does that mean New Jersey is going to say, well, we can demand a registry, which is probably what they're going to try to do next. They want a registry. But I don't know if that'll survive either, but they're arguing for registration. That'll be the next step. We therefore hold it's a complete prohibition is afoul of the Second Amendment protections. So applying these principles, we conclude it's inconsistent with the Second Amendment as well. And they go through all this, and they say the magazine is a holder for cartridges for a gun. And it's clearly the possession of arms also implies the possession of ammunition. And that's from United States versus Miller. So there you go, chat. There you go. If you're in New Jersey, congratulations. Congratulations. And allegedly, the Attorney General and the state police has said they will not enforce the law starting July 31st. Although there are apparently pictures out there of people from New Jersey with handfuls and armfuls of PMags running into Pennsylvania and buying PMags and wanting to come back. But this also kills Delaware's assault weapons ban because Delaware had one too. It's also killed the Virgin Islands assault weapons ban. Although the Virgin Islands Attorney General committed malpractice, it did and filed stuff late, so the court said, fuck you. But even the Virgin Islands, who has an assault weapons ban, dead. Good days, chat. We are jolly green giants walking the earth with guns. So, good news. Good news. Good news. The registries in New Jersey are stranging enough, so they might trigger a court battle too if they do. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, that'll be the next step. They're going to try to say, fine, we'll register them. Okay, we'll do that. I mean, there are going to be a lot of problems. But for right now, chat, life is good if you're in New Jersey. Illinois, I'm sorry. Your time will come. You will have your day in the sun, Stabby. Brimstone, Stabby. All of my other residents of Illinois, my chatters in Illinois. You will have your day. By God, you will have your home again. I promise you. You will get it one day. It's just not today. But once you get it, it's going to be so, that victory, chat, is going to be so sweet. It'll be a victory you've been waiting. I'm promising it to you now. In 3,000 years' time, you shall have that victory, chat. You shall have that victory. You shall have it. I promise you. I promise you, you will have that victory. It's just probably not going to be till 2027, sadly. Sorry. But you'll get it. You'll get it. And we'll all be able to be there together. All my California bros. All the Washington bros. Don't worry. It's coming for you too. It's coming for you too. It's another win for the toe. Yes. Afton with 5 subs. Oh, that's a good looking dog. That's a nice looking dog. It's no Clyde. It's no Clyde. No Clyde. But that's a good looking puppy. A good looking dogger. That's a good looking dogger out there, chat. Thank you for your support, your generosity. I appreciate it. Iron Knuckles says, what is it going to mean for New York gun laws? They're going to go down in flames too. Is it going to be forever? Or well, the Second Circuit is where New York is. But when the Supreme Court and Viramontes and Grant fucking put foot to ass, New York's assault weapons ban. Muerto. Massachusetts. Muerto. Vermont. Muerto. Connecticut. Muerto. Rhode Island. Muerto. It's happening, chat. We're fucking doing it. We're doing it. We're doing it. We're doing it. Just you wait. Just you wait. The Amateur Iconoclast for wide sob. Thank you for your support, your generosity. And Afton, thank you for your five subs. That's Never. She's a Clyde fan. Aw. So if your dog's name is Never, and it's like walking down the street away from you, you're like, Never, come here. And people are like, are you telling your dog to run away? But I like that name, Never. Never. Never's a Clyde fan. Good. As long as Never's not going to eat Clyde. It's Clyde approved, yes. Lawful Lucas is from your out to majority of SCOTUS years. It's rough out here in MA. It's Victory is coming for everybody, man. Victory is coming for everybody. Victory is coming for everybody. Yes. Never sit. Yes. I like that. That's very funny. I like that. It's good. Yes. Well, it looks like a very nice dog. Very nicely taken care of. I'm not holding my breath. SCOTUS will make the correct ruling, especially compromised judges like ACB on the bench. Yeah, is she going to, but my kid saw my body armor and I got scared. What a fuck. Like, your job's not to be scared. Your job's to speak from your chest. Speak with an open chest, Amy, and do your fucking job. That's your job. Your honor is to do it. Not be scared. You got a bulletproof vest and a security detail. Fucking put it to use. So. I think everyone got on the ACB testimony wrong. She know they're just have to live in constant fear. We choose to live like this and no one should have to. Yeah, but she's letting it affect her. She's letting it affect her. You know what it is. This woman's afraid to make the right decisions. Unlike John Roberts, who's worried about being invited to cocktail parties, Amy Coney Barrett's worried about her family, which, you've got fucking people with guns protecting you for the rest of your life. Fuck you worried about. Yeah, she took the dog. Or she took the job. She took the job, chat, and that's the thing. You took the king's shilling. Now it's time to go to war, Amy. If you don't want the king's shilling, you want to bugger off, then don't take the shilling. But you know what? There were 40 shillings on the drum. And you volunteered to come. You volunteered to enlist and fight these communist foes today. Over the hills and far away. Sean Sandwich Sundry for 15 shekels says, your handler wanted me to pass this on. He wouldn't tell me for what. All he said was you do a good job while rubbing your hands together. Thank you. Bass song, yes. Sharp would still fuck her. Yeah, don't act like you wouldn't either. But if Sharp fucked her, she'd probably get killed at some point. So there might be a silver lining in there. Oh, Sean B needs to hook up with her dressed as Sharp. And then maybe some French spy kills her. That would be funny. Yeah. If she's scared, maybe she needs to keep her rifle by her side. I know. Because when those sinners come and, when those sinners find us, you shouldn't hide. And even if they come loud and they come fast, you can shoot first. And we can last. Just keep your rifle by your side. Very critical. Very critical. Always an upside. Yes, there is. Always a silver lining, chat. Always a silver lining. Always a silvered lining. Oh. All right, guys. With that said, we are all caught up. Tomorrow, guys, if you guys are new, thank you for stopping by. All the robots over on Twitter. I know you're there as robots, but still. If we can get OpenAI to start these AI launching shadow wars against each other and attacking each other unprovoked, well, maybe AI, you could start watching me a little bit. Thursday night show tomorrow night. We got a million things, guys. We're not going to be going through anything super huge tomorrow. But we are going to go through a bunch of cases. There was a $100 million ghost gun verdict in a lawsuit. The Tate brothers got arrested. Shiloh Hendricks is at trial. The Memphis mom who shot the pedophile. There's an illegal immigrant suing Trump. Anthropic settled for $1 billion. All kinds of things that are going on. A bunch of guys in the Whitmer kidnapping plot, are now out because their cases have been tossed. We're going to go through all of that tomorrow night at 9:30, guys. Hope to see you there. Sounding like DSP. Thanks, Katie. Yes. Perfect time for a train sim world stream now. Without my graphics card, I can't run a game like that. The internal graphics card on my computer will not support it. Using Photoshop is a struggle right now with my graphics card, the internal one. It is having a tough time. When you like mess with something, like removing background from something, you can see the progress bar jumps on screen. It's struggle bussing. Yes, but Clendy, you're right. I love how Keep Your Rifle by Your Side was intended to be a parody, but people just embraced it, be like, yeah, it do be like that. I know. Yes, the makers of Far Cry were very upset when people adopted it. Just like Yankee Doodle. The British are like, you're supposed to hate it. And we're like, we like it. It's good. It's good, chat. It's good. Phantom says, do you need a video card for a good price? I sent my video card out to Northwest Repair to see if it can be fixed or what's the issue. So maybe, but no, I don't know yet. So I broke my GPU in the move. I didn't support it or dismount it. I didn't think I'd have to. I wasn't even thinking about that. So Northwest Repair is the GOAT. Yeah, I'm hoping he can fix it. We'll see. Hopefully I get an answer here pretty quick. So I know he's busy, but I paid for like the expedited stuff. With that said, guys, I will see you guys all tomorrow. Remember, until next time, chat, just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. Congratulations again to the state of New Jersey and the people of New Jersey. You are now amongst the free again. Welcome. Enjoy your AR-15s. Enjoy your magazines. It's going to be based. It's going to be based out there, chat. It's a good day. It's a good day for America. So good night, chat. See you guys tomorrow.
Weapons, blacksmithing, and models of planes, esoteric works, and even some trains. Much merriment had while drinking White Claws, tips on hunting, and even talking the law. Whatever you do, just don't talk to cops. Even when they nab you on illegal stops. Just 'cause you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. But please talk to a local attorney. Was that the fat guy?